for my conversation, I see. You don't know me like that. 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 But these motherfuckers do. Born in Guyana, raised in Brooklyn. Bring that sensational shit. Every time I spit it, I make money off the radar. Face you with my DJ skills. If you talking some bullshit I don't wanna hear, I'm real in your ear. Every time I appear, quick lesson, I'm about my paper. One man band, I recommend. Spark something, enter my zone. One of a kind, blow your mind. I got that natural shine. Get you know me like that. You don't know me like that. Get you know me like that. You don't know me like that. You don't know me like that. Get you know me like that. But these motherfuckers do. Like that. Yeah, I rock the spot. Hot it up a lot. All with my shit and I keep it like that. Next level shit when you fucking with me. Raw material, my forte, my flavor taste it. I'm breezy with the bliss, baby define it. Got your freak down on it. You don't know me like that. 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 These motherfuckers do. Better mothers, raise better daughters. They get deep in 3 feet water. Baptize $1 and bring back 100. I came from swerving on you blunted. I groove on the groove, how I do. I'm on for the cause, too hot to touch. I bring the raw deluxe, fuck the airwaves up. Shout out to that famous DJs, hear me be on the cut. Watch on the frenzy, I be about. I came from my get busy route. I got this track in action, my flow priceless, and I got it in the bag. Bag. I see. You don't know me like that. You don't know me like that. You don't know me like that, like that. These motherfuckers do. Like that. Plant Eaters production. You don't know me like that. You don't know me like that. You don't know me like that. But these motherfuckers do. I'm a motherfucking chainsaw. See everything, it remain raw. Why you think we brought Q unique and slain for? The same reason that Henry VIII was king for. The same reason Kaczynski was in the Bing for. The thoughts going through Tyson mind in his ring walk. If it's beef, I suggest to you that you bring chalk. Everything is more merciless than a Ming thought. You in county and thought that you speaking Bing talk.
Oh man. Oh, hold on. This bitch ass shit. It won't even scroll down. Here, hold on. Let me reload this. Alright, let me try that again.
I'm a motherfucking chainsaw. See everything, it remain raw. Why you think we brought Q unique and slain for? The same reason that Henry VIII was king for. The same reason Kaczynski was in the Bing for. The thoughts going through Tyson mind in his ring walk. If it's beef, I suggest to you that you bring chalk. Everything is more merciless than a Ming thought. You in county and thought that you speaking Bing talk. I still have a feel cause I was born and killed. Ain't no love to see the devil done stole my soul. I still have a feel cause I was born and killed. Put the metal in your mouth like you was rocking braces.
After the game ends, I'm blasting from Gravesend. You rapping for gay men, I'm a master of mayhem. The city's a pool of devils and sin. I give you the tools that'll sever your skin. Slice the hands of a track assassin, choking the victim, keeping the gap. I'm blasting, I'm hoping and wishing the streets let me stack from rapping. I'm sneaking the crack, holding a magnum cannon. You slamming.
I still have a feel cause I was born and killed. Ain't no love to see the devil done stole my soul. Cause I was born and killed. Metal in your mouth like you was rocking.
I'm ghetto like strawberry in a limo, copping rocks in Queensbridge. Real shit, keep your weapons concealed, kid. This is for soldiers that chose to ride. Those that died, logo made of skulls and knives. Murderers multiply, souls survive. Those that know the road survive, scope the sky, vultures fly. Desert eagle, chrome collide. Close your eyes, it's the hellion. My rebellion, retaliate. I have the whole New York state aiming at your face.
I still have a feel cause I was born and killed. Ain't no love to see the devil done stole my soul. I still have a feel cause I was born and killed.
I was on a crash course with the cemetery or the task force. Shooting for the skies, I'd do anything to blast off. Rewind to 99, fucking now fast forward. If I could see today, this is everything I asked for. Back then I had nothing, I could rap my ass off. I'm on the corner spitting raps, twisting caps off. Now here I am today, people. See, this is what you asked for. Not the man, not the myth, and the superhero with his mask off.
stealing, catching feelings. Everybody swear they dealing and selling vinyl. Acting like you Richie, but you Lionel. Style primal, so you study mine like a final and still fail. Lost the battle, now you leave a blood trail. Like a snail, you just a shell, just as well. You can't come where I dwell, I rebel. Battling forever and a day, never went away. I bring it to you on a tray with a glass of ice. I'll make you call me master twice. I'm too nice, kid, I'm just too nice. Don't you get it? I wouldn't have said it the first time. I don't curse rhyme, I curse swine. The original, like before you when you blind. Why you still looking for a sign? Original rap, everybody stealing, catching feelings. Everybody sweating, dealing, and selling vinyl. Acting like you Richie, but you Lionel. Style primal, so you study mine like a final and still fail. Lost the battle, now you leave a blood trail. Like a snail, you just a shell, just as well. You can't come where I dwell. I rebel, never end the day, never went away. I bring it to you on a tray with a glass of ice. I'll make you call me master twice. I'm too nice, kid, I'm just too nice. Don't you get it? I wouldn't have said it the first time. I don't curse rhyme, I curse swine. The original, like before you when you blind. Why you still looking for a sign?
Welcome to the Machine Lies, where we talk about the lies of the machine on the machine that lies. And yeah, blessings to all the people that are here. You know, yeah, we got some more music for you guys, but yeah, we'll play lots of music during this stream, right? But mainly, this stream is about read, right? If you like to read, all right, and of course we have to say it like that because people think it's bad to read, right? And so yeah, if you're looking for a nerdy Friday night, starting with the salvation history of the Jews, and then go into different thoughts. We're going to explore Rousseau to Mein Kampf by Hitler. And then we're going to go to some Nietzsche and some Evola, as we've been doing now. We have another part of this stream that's like usually news and stuff, news and analysis, right? But we can't actually get into that today because our dear friend Neurojack is busy, right? So we're preparing a segment, okay, that we're going to do covering recent news, but we need Neurojack for that. So we're going to wait till Neurojack. But I didn't want these readings to go because it's been very long since we did a last episode of this edition, right? So we need to continue on with the reading here, right? So we're going to go ahead and go into the read, right? Because, yeah, it make them squeal like a piggy by reading, right? And of course, we got ourselves a reader. Right? So yeah, let's go to the stories of the devil, right? Okay, this is going to be very interesting. It's very interesting to me, right? He says, gradually, other Jews began to adapt the new dualistic concepts of the Zoroastrians into the Israelite tradition. This is according to Gregory Riley in the book River of God, and I'm on page 98, right? And actually, I actually wanted to do a show where I just read, right? Because that'll really, because let's just read. Let's forget the analysis and that we do on Wednesday and Saturday, right? And look at what, and just look at the information, right? And of course, I'll comment by and by, right? But yeah, it says in the New Testament, the devil is called Beelzebub. Beelzebub, the ruler of demons in Mark 3:22. Mark 3:22, right? Mark is the shortest of the Gospels, right? Okay. Yeah, there's 4 different Gospels, right? John contains most of the new information, right? The other 3 are called synoptic Gospels because a lot of information in those Gospels is repeating, right? So if you look at the Gospels, and of course they're different from the letters of Paul, right? If you want to read a chronological account of the Bible, it's basically the 4 Gospels, right? And then I think it's Acts. They're setting up the churches, right? And then Paul's letters would be letters he's writing to those churches that are already established. And of course, he is apostle to the Gentiles, right? In that role, right? So anyways, let's go on. So Mark 3:22, Beelzebub, the ruler of demons. The title is based on the name of one of the old gods of Canaan. Canaan, who was the greatest competitor of the God of Israel, Baal. Okay, so this name is based on the god Baal, right? In the old Canaanite religion that was inherited by Israel, El was his wife, Asherah. El and his wife Asherah had 70 sons. Right, they had 70 sons, right? The gods of the 70 nations of the earth, chief among them was Baal. Because Baal is the son of El. And he's kind of like Saturn or Kronos in the sense that he controls like the seasons and stuff, right? So yeah, Asherah had 70 sons, and the gods of the 70 nations of the earth, right? Chief among them was Baal. Baal, a name properly a title meaning Lord, quote unquote, Lord, quote unquote, right? Since he was ranking son of El, the king of the gods, he was also the prince. The prince. Right, let's play this devilish music while I read this shit. Right? Play this devil shit. Snake ass devil shit. Since he was a ranking son of El, the king of the gods, he was also the prince in Ugarthic Zebul, hence the name Baal Zebul, the Lord Prince, written in the New Testament as Beelzebub. Beelzebub. Turn that down a little bit. Beelzebub. Baal was a Canaanite storm god who wrote the chariot of the winds, thundered at his enemies from his mountain palace, protected or persecuted with his lightning, and brought fertility to the earth in the rainy season. All of these were aspects of Yahweh of Israel, the writer of the clouds. Psalms 68:4. These similarities of function and shared characteristics brought Yahweh and Baal into direct competition and made differentiation difficult. The cult of Baal was a large part of the religion of Canaan and Israel, and it continued right through Israelite history. Saul, for example, who lived in the 11th century, was the first king of Israel. Named one of his sons Mephabal, meaning from the mouth of Baal. 2 Samuel 21:8. Jonathan, David's closest friend, did the same. 2 Samuel 4:4. Scribes altered the name to Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth. Right. It kind of sounds like Mephistopheles or whatever. Mephibosheth. Right? These name beginnings, Mepha. I wonder where they get the name Mephistopheles from. Right? Let me actually look this up. Mephistopheles. They might tell us later in this reading. Mephistopheles. Is he only in Dr. Faustus? I know he's in Dr. Faustus. From German folklore? Is Stophilis a character? Right? So Mephistopheles. Right? Because what I'm actually seeing in these names, right? Look at this. Mephabal. Mephibosheth. From the mouth of. From the mouth of. So that's weird. Mephistopheles from the mouth of Stophiles? Crazy. I wonder what Stophiles means or whatever, right? Or Stophos. Let me see if I can find Stophos. Stophos. Stophos Greek. Sophos means wise. Stoph. I can't find it. Let me look again. Mephistopheles. Etymology or meaning. Here it comes. Mephistopheles. Philos. Negation of love. Meth, the negation of. Mephitic, poisonous vapors from pools, caverns, or springs. So it means not loving. So I think it means like something like from the mouth of the opposite of love. Or like poisonous hate. Something like that, right? But yeah, anyways, let's go on here. So Mephabal, meaning in Hebrew from the mouth of Baal, 2 Samuel 21:8. Jonathan, David's closest friend, did the same. Jonathan, David's closest friend, did the same. 2 Samuel 4:4. Scribes altered the name to Mephibosheth. From the mouth of shame, in order to denigrate Yahweh's great competitor. Worship of Baal was so common, in fact, that Elijah in the middle of the 9th century declared to the Lord that Israelites had turned against the worship of Yahweh entirely, destroying his altars and killing his prophets. And that he alone was left. God answered that there were still 7,000 in Israel who had not bowed to Baal. 1 Kings 19:18. Later, when King Ahaziah had been severely injured, he sent messengers to the god Baal-zebul in Ekron to find out if he would die. 2 Kings 1:3. Here again, scribes rewrote the text to read Baal-zebub, Lord of the Flies, quote unquote. Elijah declared to the messengers, quote, "Is it because there is no God in Israel that you are sending to inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron?" 2 Kings 1:6. Okay, so he's mentioned in Samuel, he's mentioned in Kings, he's mentioned in Psalms, he's mentioned in Mark. The cause of anger of Yahweh against Israel and the reason for the exile, according to the prophet Jeremiah in the 6th century, was Baal. Jeremiah asked, quote, "Why is the land ruined and laid waste like a wilderness, so that no one passes through?" The Lord answered, quote, "Because you have forsaken my law that I set before them, and have gone after Baals, as their ancestors taught them." Jeremiah 9:12 through 14. So Baal was the great rival and the arch enemy of Yahweh. What does Baal do, right? Baal controls the forces of nature, right? That's why when it said that Yahweh was riding on the clouds, right? This is a direct competition with Baal, right? Because if Yahweh controls the forces of nature, then who's Baal, right? Or so they said, right? So he said that under the influence of Persian dualism, after the exile, he became identified with the devil, the Beelzebub of the New Testament. The writings of 2nd Isaiah and Qumran community, drawing on one of the 2 strands of Zoroastrian tradition that we examined earlier, claim that God was the source of both good and evil. God was not wholly righteous. The other strand of Zoroastrianism put God in competition with another power, a dark power, who is the cause of evil. God was not alone as God. Both strands presented difficulty for the view that God was good and that God was the sole sovereign of all. They called into question Deuteronomy's claim that the Lord is God. There is no other beside him. And that, quote, all his ways are just, unquote. Deuteronomy 32:4. A solution to this difficulty was found again in the old traditions. The view that had been the highest that the highest God presided over a council of lesser gods. Psalm 82:1, God, quote, God has taken place in the divine council, unquote. In the combat myths, the upper world gods ultimately defeated the forces of chaos. The enemies, though formidable, were weaker and lesser beings. In Zoroastrianism, these lesser beings were the archangels and angels, archdemons and demons. Archdemons and demons. By melding Zoroastrian dualism with the old view of the divine council and the combat myth, believers could see the God of Israel as the one sovereign God of righteousness presiding over the lesser divine beings of the heavenly council, the angels, some of whom were righteous, while others, by their own choice, were the cause of evil. The cause of evil. This solution removed the origin of evil in heaven, one stage from God. Evil was a result of a deliberate choice to sin by some of the angels. These sinful angels were led by a great adversary similar to the terrifying enemies in the combat myth, the devil. He was understood in terms of the great mythic opponents of the heavenly gods. Though at times an angel, he could be a great dragon, a monstrous snake who ruled by death. Arrayed against him would be his righteous antagonist and counterpart, the angel of the Lord, Zechariah 3:1, or Michael, the archangel, Jude 9, or later for Christians, Jesus. A number of different stories were told in prostaxilic literature about how this powerful angel had become the devil. An early story that originally had nothing to do with the devil attempted to locate the cause of evil among sinful angels. Greek stories had many centuries told of a god mating with humans, producing the great heroes of epic, such as Heracles, Achilles, and others. Jewish writers adapted this scheme, turning its positive Greek use into negative. In the Jewish version, a group of 200 of the sons, quote unquote, of God, known as the Watchers, looked down from heaven and, like the Greek god, lusted after human women. After bribing the women with the secrets of heaven, quote unquote, which included the making and applying of cosmetics in addition to more useful arts, such as medicine and metallurgy, these angelic beings and their female consorts mated. Their union produced a race of lawless giants who, because of their violent sinfulness, were condemned by God to be destroyed by the flood. 1 Enoch 6-16. Yeah, I think we already triggered some idiotic fools here in the chat. Oh, yeah. Come on down to the rodeo, boy. Trigger alert. We got ourselves a reader. No, you please continue. Go watch your LARP shows. Go watch your fake ass fucking not ironic comedy show. Or your fake ass nonsense. punk ass bitch. Anyways, let's move on. God, I watched these people watch nonsense for years. Trash. Their brains are full of garbage. Garbage. Garbage in, garbage out. They come here to chat. Chat actors. You couldn't comprehend anything I'm reading anyways. Let's not pretend. Let's not fucking pretend. You sound like adult. Let's move on here. So anyways, you know what's really interesting about the Book of Enoch? Is this idea about them giving the gods metallurgy and all these gifts of science and technology, right? Because the Jews saw these Greek civilizations as more advanced than them. So they wanted to critique their high level of development as well. Right? So, I mean, most of the commentary in the Book of Enoch is a commentary on the Greek gods. That's why they're these half human, half God beings. They're intermediaries between God and man, in other words. No, go fuck yourself, dude. I'm not doing original thoughts. It's called reading today. Go look at any of my other episodes. I'm not here to dance for you. Eat a dick. Anyways, I'm going to continue. In the Jewish version, a group of 200 of the sons of God, known as the Watchers. Right? The leader of this band of fallen angels was Azazel. Azazel branded the cause of evil on earth. The Lord said to Raphael, quote, to Azazel ascribe all sin. So he's going to extra biblical sources at this point. Right, he's looked at Deuteronomy, he's looked at Jeremiah, he's looked at some of Mark, he's looked at Samuel and Kings. And of course, RT doesn't know any of this shit. He doesn't know any of this shit. It's fucking moron. Yep. The leader of this band of fallen angels, Azazel, people can't just thank you for the knowledge. Isn't that surprising? Well, you, sir, are a retard. You, sir, are an actual retard. How much did you investigate any of my other shows where I do commentary and analysis? You are a fucking retard. RT. You're a literal fucking retard. What the fuck? He never even said that. Are you absolutely moronic? I read primary sources all the time. I don't just tell people what I think. That would be my fucking opinion. I back up my opinion with primary sources and secondary sources. That's how retarded you are, sir. You've observed my content for 2 or 3 years. I even have a clip of you coming up on Benton's stream to tell me how intelligent I am and how I'm good at doing analysis and all that stuff. I guess he forgot he said that. How moronic is this guy? This old fucking moron. How moronic are these people? Like, this guy's an old stooge watching Cockboy Hotline, it's a fake comedy show, for years. That's how I found him. What a fucking old stooge. Grow the fuck up, buddy. Azazel, messenger of Satan, 1 Enoch 54:6. And Lord said to Raphael, one of his other angels, to Azazel ascribe all sin, right? Thus making the devil ultimately responsible for bringing sin to humanity. In another story, Azazel is identified as the devil himself in Jubilees. Yeah, let me just ban RT. Yeah. This guy's a retard. He still doesn't get it. Yeah, have a good day, sir. You can watch the other shows. Have a good night. And like people told you 3 or 4 times, they already answered your question. Have a good night. I have a clip of him saying otherwise. I have a clip of RT saying the opposite of that. Fucking moron. How dense is that motherfucker? What a stupid motherfucker. Honestly. Azazel as identified as the devil himself in Jubilees. Oh, actually Azazel's mentioned in the Bible. I didn't even know that. Oh, wait, no, wait. Sorry, that's not in the Bible. That's in the book of Jubilees. Okay, yeah, never mind that. Yeah. Here one should perhaps place one of the most unusual stories about the devil and sex. One that sees sexual sin as a failing, as it had been of Azazel, of the devil himself. The role of progenitor of Cain is assigned to the devil. The role that later authors thought he accomplished by union with Eve in the Garden of Eden. Whoa. That's dark. That's dark. Yeah, this is right. Yeah. This is exactly true. He watches 40-year-old dudes LARP online with a fake comedy show. This is what this guy's accomplished with his like chatting. People are incredibly dense. For Maccabees 18:8, the seducing and defiling serpent. I don't think Maccabees is I don't think 4 Maccabees is in the traditional Bible. But I think that's an extra biblical source. I think the Ethiopians might have it. The Ethiopians have Enoch too, right? And I think they have Jubilees as well. Right? So the Ethiopians, I believe they read all those books, right? So it's interesting. Yet if Azazel is one who introduced sin to humanity just prior to the flood, who was the serpent in the Garden of Eden? Inevitably, Azazel, who became identified with the serpent who deceived Adam and Eve. Apocalypse of Abraham 23. Christians have apparently oh, interesting. So Azazel transforms into the serpent in the Apocalypse of Abraham. Christians have apparently always thought of the snake in the garden as the devil. Paul writes in Corinthians, for example, that they not be deceived by false Christian missionaries, as the serpent deceived Eve, 2 Corinthians 11:3. Quite surprisingly, though, the identification of the serpent in the Garden of Eden with the devil seems to be seems to have arisen in pre-Christian traditions. The serpent as a symbol in ancient Near East meant many positive things before it became a symbol of the devil for the exile. It symbolized life, wisdom, and even resurrection. Large and harmless, snakes were ever-present denizens. That's my homie Denizen. Yeah, Denizen was defending me earlier. Great shout out to Denizen. Blessings, homie. I see you. I see you out there telling the truth. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I appreciate them. Yeah, let's go on a little bit. Here, hold on. Actually, did I skip? Oh no, wait. Yeah, so oh yeah, here we go. Asclepios, right? You guys know the staff of Asclepius, right? Which is basically seen on the ambulance, right? Where the snake is basically seen as a symbol of healing, right? A symbol of rebirth, right? Because it sheds its skin, right? Asclepios in Greece, their venom was the most effective antibiotic agent in antiquity. Interesting. The shedding of their skin represented renewal of life. Oh yeah, I just said that. The writer of Genesis did not call the snake the devil. And he could easily have done. Genesis 3:1-2 reads, quote, "Now the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman." Yeah, I mean, I appreciate RT, but the thing is that RT came on panel and literally complimented me for giving deep analysis on the Bible and different things like that. He came up on Benton's panel and said that. So, I mean, does this old man have fucking amnesia? Right? That's the problem, is like people can't be honest, right? They can't be fucking honest. Yeah, let me take a little break there. I'll continue this in a minute. I have like 20 pages of this to go. So yeah, it's quite a bit. Let me take a little break there. Play some other music, and then we'll be back in a second. I appreciate you guys.
It's been going on for years. They attack my dreams to make me fit the system, and then they rip my ideas, twisted them, pissed on them, sold them out to the masses, corrupted the seeds, wrecked some souls, but I'm here and I still stand. And I still stand. Fight the fight! Fight the power! Fight it down! You know I'm right! Start the fight! Fight the power! Fight it down! You know I'm right! Confused and rude, I have violence on my mind, and I wonder where it takes me. Like they put poison in my food. I feel it coming up inside of me. I'm in a state of alert. I just want to cross any line just to see the liars on their knees. I walk the street, and I walk alone. I fight the norm. When I grow the seed, I set the tone. I know the pain. I take control. Oh, fuck you all. Start the fight! Fight the power! Fight it down! You know I'm right! Start the fight! Fight the power! Fight it down! You know I'm right! When you attack to the state becomes the enemy. And when money dictates justice, your life is ruled by hate. Do everything on others? You want me to do everything on others?
let's go. The writer of Genesis did not call the snake the devil, as he could easily have done. Genesis 3:1-2 reads, "Now the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman." The serpent in his depiction is an animal created by God. It does not seem to be dark. It does not seem to be a dark spiritual power in itself, nor is such a power mentioned as inspiring or motivating the serpent behind the scenes. The passage could have been written quite differently. Quote, "The devil entered the serpent and said to the woman," for example, if the writer had wanted to indicate that the serpent was the devil. Furthermore, Satan does not appear anywhere else in the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. The only person described with the label Satan is the angel of the Lord, who goes out to oppose the pagan prophet Balaam, who is attempting to curse Israel. Quote, "The angel of the Lord took his stand in the road as his adversary." Okay, which equals Satan in Hebrew. Numbers 22:22. Okay. So Satan just means adversary, right? The fact that in the story of the Watchers, quote unquote, all sin is to be ascribed to Azazel shows that more than one source of evil in the human sphere was current in the sacred stories of the ancients. Chaos monsters, earth dragons, sea serpents, heavenly rebels, and of course the old standby humans themselves were all responsible, depending on the particular prophet, for evil in the world. There was, as we have seen so often, no orthodoxy, no definitive creed. This is his opinion, right? He believes that these were part of a cumulative process, right? So that's part of the argument that he's making in his book, right? The River of God by Gregory Riley, right? So he's simply starting with the presupposition, right, of a genealogical synthesis between many different views, right, throughout the world, right? So then he's analyzing their various, points, right? Not in a perennialism or syncretism, but looking at the ideas on their own terms and then seeing how they differ from each other, right? In sort of comparative analysis, right? But of course, once you take the sort of secular view, right, it's pretty obvious that they try to synthesize things through their own particular biases, right? So we have to understand that. He says one of the most influential stories in the religious history of the origin of the devil relates to the fall of the angel who is to become the devil, to his relationship with Adam. Angels were created long before the material earth out of the spiritual elements, much superior to dirt and water. Yet even though Adam was made of mud, he was made of the image of God. Something far and away beyond the level of creation and angels. Quote, "Through the devil's envy, we are told," quote, "death entered the world," unquote, in the Wisdom 2:24. So this is another idea that's all over the ideas of Paul the Apostle. Right? In Romans 4, I believe. Right? He talks about sin and death entering the world. Right? I believe he talks about Adam. Right? So it's pretty interesting, right? This whole idea of sin and death entering the world because of the devil, right? Okay. As it says, Wisdom 2:24, Wisdom of Solomon, death entered the world through the devil's envy. When God created Adam on earth, the angels were commanded to reverence him as being made in God's image. Most of the angels did as required, but one high-level angel refused on the grounds that he was both greater and older than Adam. This angel became the devil. This angel became the devil. He was followed in his rebellion by many other angels who became his army of dark spiritual powers. Adam and Eve, 13 through 15. Tertullian de Patientia, 5. Okay. This view of the origin of the devil is the basis for the figure Iblis in Islam. He says Quran 15, 26 through 35. Okay. For early Christians, the most important story of the origin of the devil was found in the Old Testament prophecies against the king of Babylon. Isaiah 14, 4 through 20, the king of Tyre, Ezekiel 28, 11 through 19, Isaiah 14, 3 through 23 is a prophecy that condemns Babylon. Okay. For its oppression of the nations it had conquered, centering especially on the arrogance of the king. It describes him in terms that seem to go far beyond a merely human king. How you are fallen from heaven, O day star, son of dawn. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. Quote, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will make myself like the Most High. Isaiah 14, 12 through 14. This must mean the devil, writes Tertullian, against Marcion. Okay? So it's identified as the devil by Tertullian. Okay? Jesus, after his disciples returned from a mission that included exorcisms, declared, quote, I watched Satan fall from heaven like lightning. Luke 10, 18. The statement of Jesus was used to interpret the passage in Isaiah that says of the devil that, quote, at one time he was light, unquote. Origin, first principles. Origin in his first principles, 1:5:5, fell from heaven and became darkness. Okay. The Latin translation of Isaiah 14:12 names this individual Lucifer. Okay, interesting. Lucifer. The prophet Ezekiel, so the same guy that's called Lucifer in a Latin translation is called the devil by Tertullian, right? Who is a writer that's writing in like 200 AD, right? Tertullian is like, okay, they usually say Tertullian, Justin Martyr, Origen. Like these guys are like, thinkers that developed Christian philosophy, right? But they were before the Nicene Creed, right? So some of their thoughts and writings are considered not really like canonical, I would say, right? But like their thoughts and opinions are not like canonized within the church or whatever, right? But yeah, the way that Paul's are, right? But yeah, it says the prophet Ezekiel deals similarly with the king of Tyre, expanding the scope of his prophecies seemingly beyond the human sphere. You were in Eden, the garden of God. You were blameless in your ways from the day that you were created. Until iniquity was found in you. This passage was also interpreted as referring to the devil. Okay, here, let me read that again. It says, you were in Eden, the garden of God. You were blameless in your ways the day you were created until iniquity found you. This passage was also interpreted as referring to the devil. He had been, quote, the highest ranking angel in heaven, unquote. Testament of Solomon. In the Testament of Solomon. This is where it gets really interesting, folks. It gets really interesting. I've read this book before, obviously. But yeah, it gets really interesting here. Yet on the second day of creation, this archangel, through pride, attempted to set himself up and be worshipped as equal to God. 2 Enoch 29, 4 through 5. 4 through 5. Intertestamental and later Jewish texts ascribe to the devil a variety of names. In Jubilees, he's quote unquote the chief of the spirits. Or Mastema, Mastema. Hebrew for the hateful one, literally animosity in Hebrews 1:20. In the martyrdom of Isaiah, the leader of the host of devil is called Samael. In Hebrew, called the blind God, quote unquote. 1:8. A favorite name in the Gnostic text. He is also Melchira, the king of evil, quote unquote. 1:8. And especially Belial, or useless in Hebrew. 1:8, 2 through 4. Okay, so that's in the Jubilees and the martyrdom of Isaiah. Okay, in a label that recalls his origins as a fallen angel, he is also, quote, the angel of iniquity, unquote. 2, 4 through 11. In the Testament of the 12 patriarchs, he is the prince of error, quote unquote. Testament of Simeon, 2:7. And the prince of demons, quote unquote. Testament of Solomon, 6:1 through 7. In a passage that recalls a verse in the New Testament, epistle of 1 Peter, the devil is a wild old lion, quote unquote. Joseph and Aseneth, 12:9. 1 Peter 5:8 reads, quote, your adversary, the devil, prowls like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Seeking someone to devour. Crazy. In the New Testament, the embodiment of the of evil is called by several different names, reflecting the many traditions that were melded to construct the concept of the devil. In the intertestamental period, in one remarkable passage, we find, quote, the great dragon, the serpent of old, who is called the devil and Satan, in Revelations 12:9. The dragon clearly recalls Leviathan, the great, quote, dragon that is in the sea, unquote. In Isaiah 27:1, Tiamat and Yam. While the serpent is also the serpent who deceived Eve by his craftiness. 2 Corinthians 11:3 and Genesis 3:1 through 15. Just as the intertestamental literature, images, and names of the great opponents of the gods of the heaven and combat myths are used of the devil. The name devil and Satan are used interchangeably without apparent differences in meaning. In Jesus' parables of the sower, for example, the one who steals the seed from the hearts and from the hearts of those beside the road is Satan in one gospel and the devil in another. Mark 4:15, Luke 8:12. In other passages, the antithesis of Christ is Belial, 2 Corinthians 6:15. And the spirit that he battles is Beelzebul, Mark 3:22. The devil is called tempter, Matthew 4:3. The evil one, Matthew 6:13. The enemy, Matthew 13:39. The accuser, Revelations 12:10. And the ruler of this world, in John 12:31. Now he's going to explain that last one when he's the ruler of the ruler of this world, right? Okay, that one's a kind of crazy idea, right? But yeah, this whole idea that that he's went through all the ways in which it was mentioned in the earlier scriptures, right? From the book of Enoch to Jubilees to Isaiah to all these different names, right? To Jeremiah to Kings, right? And of course, they're taking all of these different titles of the devil and Satan and applying them to the different names they give in the New Testament, like accuser and tempter and enemy and all this type of stuff, right? So yeah, fascinating stuff. So there we read, here, hold on, let me see what pages that was. Page 98 through 105 in the book River of God by Gregory Riley. Right, so pretty powerful reflections there. Lots of different references there. That's what I really like about those, about that little sliver of material right there. Right, there's like bunch of references to different texts. Right, so yeah, I love writings like that where there's lots of references sewed in. Right. Anyways, let's go to a little bit of yeah, let me try to open up some songs for you guys. Let me try to play a song for you guys. See which one I can find here. Yeah, let's listen to Kano Being again. This is a damn good song. Oh, whoops. Looks like I got too many songs back here, it says. Yeah, let's play a Kano Being. And then we'll go to Rousseau, Social Contract. Last time we read The Republic of Plato and John Locke, 2 treatises of government. Very important reflections about the foundations of the state. And actually, it corresponded with my show because I was doing lots of different shows on the foundations of the state in terms of liberal ideology, right? The concept of the state. And then we went to Alua and looked at how this complex of the nation state forms throughout time, right? And of course, the state becomes the embodiment of the world spirit in Hegel. So yeah, different ideas that we went through. We went through a bunch of different philosophical concepts. And of course, we made reference to primary sources. Right, I gave one single show where I actually read different things from phenomenology, lectures in history, and different things by Hegel. But yeah, anyways. Yeah, let's listen to Kano Being.
Good stuff, man. That's pretty cool, man. That's great. Good job, brothers and sisters. Try your best. Good for you. Hope that everything's going good in your world on this beautiful day on Friday, September 5th. Would you say that it is? Going good, going well, going great?
All right, welcome back. And welcome to Modern Men Lost Again. Thank you for clicking it up. Clicking it up. Clicking that up. All right. Okay, let's move on here. Let's see what's going on here. Book 1, Social Contract. Okay, so this clearly reflects what he said in the other thing we were going into. You know, let me actually open up Discourses on Inequality, because these two quotes are literally the same quote, right? This is actually fascinating stuff. And of course, I don't know if you're familiar with Discourses on the Arts and the Sciences, Modern Men, but it's a pretty interesting work, you know. Like this dude, Rousseau. It's a continuation of a long line of political theories, state of nature theories. All right. So check this out. He says, so long as government and law provide for security, well-being, men in their common life, the arts, literature, and science is less despotic. though perhaps more powerful, fling garlands and flowers over the chains which weigh them down. I like how he says less despotic, though more powerful. Right? They don't sway people as much as, great leadership, right? I mean, they said that, but he says they're more powerful, right? They're more incessant, honestly. Right? They thrive more on men's sort of ideal for luxury and softness and all those types of things, right? Men become lettered, right? And he says it stifles in men's breasts that sense of original liberty, right? Like, which is love of family, love of country, right? All that type of stuff for which they have been born, cause them to love their own slavery. Right? So just like this idea that men are taught to love their own slavery within the discourses of the science and arts, check out this quote on social contract, right? He says, man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. Uh-oh. Right? So not only does man love his slavery, right? He doesn't realize he's born free, and everywhere he's in chains. Right? It's an extremely precarious situation, right? Man is born free, everywhere he is in chains. One thinks himself the master of others and still remains a greater slave than they. How did this change come about? I do not know. What can make it legitimate? That question I think I can answer, he says. The social compact. I suppose men to have reached the point in which obstacles in the way of their preservation in the state of nature show their power of resistance be greater than the resources of disposal of each individual for his maintenance. Okay, power of resistance greater than the resources of disposal of each individual. Or the state of nature. The primitive condition can then subsist no longer, and the human race would perish unless it change its manner of existence. But as men cannot engender new forces, but only unite and direct existing ones, they have no other means of preserving themselves in the formation by aggregation of a sum of forces great enough to overcome the resistance. These they have to bring into play by means of a single motive and cause to act in concert. This sum of forces can arise only where several persons come together, but as the force of liberty of each man are the chief instruments of his self-preservation. And how can he pledge them without harming his own interests and neglecting the care he owes to himself? This difficulty, and its bearing on my present subject, may be stated in following terms. Quote, the problem is to find a form of association which will defend and protect with the whole common force the person and goods of each associate. And in which each, while uniting himself with all, may still obey himself alone and remain as free as before. This is the fundamental problem of which the social contract provides a solution. Okay. So this is a common problem, right? This is obviously the same issue that Locke stated, right? And Hobbes stated in terms of human freedom. Machiavelli didn't quite express the problem this way, but some might argue that in teaching every person the ways of the prince, he was trying to destroy the princely form. Well, indeed, this is what it accomplished. Right? By creating a methodology, you sublimate the actual, mystery of the one who has power, right? Good. Goes on to say the clauses of this contract, properly understood, may be reduced to one: the total surrender of each associate, together with all his rights to the whole community. For in the first place, as each gives himself, absolutely the conditions are the same for all. And this being so, no one has any interest in making them burdensome to others. Moreover, the surrender being without reserve, the union is as perfect as it can be, and no associate has anything more to demand. For if the individuals retain certain rights, as there will be no common superior to decide between them and the public, each being on one point his own judge, would ask to be so on all, the state of nature would thus continue, and the association would necessarily become inoperative or tyrannical. Finally, each man in giving himself to all gives himself to nobody, and as there is no associate over whom he does not acquire the same right as he yields others over himself, he gains an equivalent for everything he loses, and increase of force for the preservation of what he has. If then we discard from the social compact what is not of its essence, we shall find that it reduces itself to the following terms. Quote, each of us puts his person and all his power in common under the supreme direction of the general will, and in our corporate capacity, we receive each member an indivisible part of the whole. At once, in place of the individual personality of each contracting party, this act of association creates a moral or collective body composed as many members. As the assembly contains votes and receiving from this act its unity, its common identity, its life, and its will, this public person so formed the union of all other persons formerly took the took the name of the city state, and now takes that of republic or body politic. It is called by its members state. The state, when passive, sovereign when active, and power when compared with others like itself. Okay, a republic or body politic, it is called by its members a state when it's passive, a sovereign when it's active, and power when it's compared with others like itself. Those who are associated in it take collectively the name of people, and severally are called citizens, as sharing in the sovereign power, and subjects as being under the laws of the state. The sovereign. Right now, remember, he distinguished the sovereign as the active power, right? The state as basically a passive entity, and the association people. Right? So sovereignty is usually ascribed to something like nation. Right? So it's a state when passive, a nation when active. And of course, it's collectively comprised of the power of the people, is what he's trying to say there, right? So he's coming up with this notion of what sovereignty actually means. What sovereignty means, right? Okay. Okay, so he says, and we might do this again on on Friday. So if you guys like these readings, go to the last content Cuckery, the one with the Trump thumbnail on the Cyber Caliphate channel. Right? These are only available on the Cyber Caliphate channel. Right? A lot of the older episodes have some political analysis and some stuff in there too, right? Last time we did a 4th of July special. Right? So we'll continue these readings next week as well, right? So we'll try to do this on Friday. It'll just be like a Friday event. Friday night. We'll read with the nerds. Right, we'll do some nerd shit here, reading, right? Well, everybody gets down on Friday night. Right? We're going to become recluse. Yes, WWE, wrong chat. Yeah, funny. Is somebody else live right now? Let's see who else is live right now with this clown ass shit. Let's see what type of clown ass motherfuckers are live. What is this dude doing, man? Let's check this dude out, man. What is he doing? Because he was just here. This fucker, modern man, lost again. Let's check what he's doing at. Screens, machines. What? Bring you what you need. Crazy, man. Where's the part where I'm there? Let's go to the part where we're here. Oh, we're here? This is our old show. Huh. I think they're obsessing over the boy. The machine lies. They're looking at Dr. Scribina. Looking at Dr. Scribina. Man, his whole show might as well be about me. I think we hurt this guy's feelings. Oh, well, he's moved on now. But yeah, he was pretty obsessed with us for a while there. Woo! We getting free promotion all over the internet. People love us. They love to watch us. They watch other people watch us. It's a strange... It's a strange event, folks. So let's read just a little bit more of this, right, until I get to book 3 of this thing, and then I'll sort of cut this off. Hold on. You know what? Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I gotta get going here. Right, I gotta get going here. I mean, I'm gonna cut this off. We're gonna move to Mein Kampf in a little bit. Play some music and move to Mein Kampf by Hitler. This formula shows us that the act of association comprises a mutual undertaking between the public and the individuals, and that each individual, in making a contract, as we may say, with himself, is bound in a double capacity as a member of the sovereign. He is bound to the individuals, and as a member of the state to the sovereign. But the maxim of civil right, that no one is bound by undertakings made to himself, does not apply in this case. Okay, for there is a great difference between incurring an obligation to yourself and incurring one to the whole of which you form a part. In fact, each individual as a man may have a particular will contrary or dissimilar to the general will, which he has as a citizen. His particular interests may speak to him quite differently from the common interests. His absolute and naturally independent existence may make him look upon
what he owes to the common cause as a gratuitous contribution, the loss of which will do less harm to the others than the payment of it is burdensome to itself, to himself. And regarding the moral person, which constitutes the state as a persona ficta, because not a man, he may wish to enjoy the rights of citizenship without being ready to fulfill the duties of a subject. The continuance of such an injustice could not but prove the undoing of the body politic. In order, then, that the social compact may not be an empty formula, it tacitly includes the undertaking, which alone can give the force to the rest, that whoever refuses to obey the general will shall be compelled to do so by the whole body. This means nothing less that he will be forced to be free, for this is the condition which, by giving each citizen to his country, secures him against all personal dependence. And this lies the key to the working of the political machine. This alone legitimizes civil undertakings, and without it would be absurd, tyrannical, liable to the most frightful abuses. Right? So he's saying that the state has to be looked at as following the collective will of the citizens. Right? Otherwise, if it's seen as a person in and of itself or as an artificial man, and now he's really attacking the ideas of Hobbes, right? This idea that the sovereign itself has power. Right? That's why he's creating this notion of the general will or the collective will to supplant this notion of the artificial man. Right? Being a sort of fictional person that represents the entire body politic. Right? So this is a very important concept in Rousseau, right? Okay, now these are the last few paragraphs we're reading, right? In his section 8, the civil state, the passage from the state of nature to the civil state produces a very remarkable change in man. By substituting justice for instinct in his conduct and giving his actions the morality they had formerly lacked, then only when the voice of duty takes the place of physical impulses and the right of appetite does man, who so far had considered only himself, find that he is forced to act on different principles and so consult his reason before listening to his inclinations. Although in this state he deprives himself of some advantages which he got from nature, he gains in return others so great. His faculties are so stimulated and developed, his ideas so extended, his feelings so ennobled, his whole soul so uplifted, that did not the abuses of this new condition often degrade him below that which he left, he would be bound to bless continually the happy moment which took him from it forever. And instead of a stupid and unimaginative animal, made him an intelligent being and a man. Let us draw up the whole account in terms easily commensurable. When a man loses by social contract his natural liberty and unlimited right to everything he tries to get and succeeds in getting, what he gains in civil liberty and proprietorship of all he possesses. If we are to avoid mistakes in weighing one against the other, we must clearly distinguish natural liberty, which is bounded only by the strength of the individual, from civil liberty, which is limited by the general will and possession, which is merely the effect of the force of the right of the occupier, from property. Now he's borrowing that from John Locke, right? The idea of property. Yeah, we got a Discord. I thought you were in our Discord, Calix. Okay, let me drop this thing again.
Um, yeah, hold on, guys. What the hell? All right, give me a second, folks. Oh, Calix is in there. I think somebody dropped the link. Shit. Oh, yeah. Okay, thank you, my friend. Okay, so from property, which can be founded only on a positive title, we might, over and above all this, add to what man acquires in the civil state moral liberty, which alone makes him truly master of himself. For the mere impulse of appetite is slavery, while obedience to a law which we prescribe to ourselves is liberty. Check that out. Crazy quote. For the mere impulse of appetite is slavery, while the obedience to a law which we prescribe to ourselves is liberty. Is liberty. But I've already said too much on this head and philosophical meaning of the word liberty. Does not now concern us. Sounds like he's taken a philosophical idea of liberty very close to that idea of Rousseau. I mean of Ellul, right? Right, when Ellul says that basically men are everywhere in chains and don't even know it, right? Right, let's read this again, right, from Ellul, right? The moment man stops and the moment man stops and resigns himself, he becomes subject to determinism. He is most enslaved when he thinks he is comfortably settled in freedom. In the modern world, the most dangerous form of determinism is a technological phenomenon. It's not a question of getting rid of it, but by act of freedom of transcending it. And also he says, to say man is free because he obeys his nature, right? Because he is conditioned by his nature, right? Means he's forced to obey his nature, right? That doesn't mean he's free. Right? And he says, freedom is completely without meaning unless it is related to necessity, unless it represents victory over necessity. Interesting. So there are some interesting thoughts. Now we're going to look at liberty run amok in Mein Kampf, right? He's going to echo a lot of the ideas that Plato said in his Republic, right, about the problems of freedom. Right, the problems of freedom. Let me play some songs for you guys. If I can. Blessings.
Everything starts with a fight! Hey! 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 Burn inside! Burn inside! I'm burning inside! In the land of freedom! Come on!
go to heaven. Jesus said I would. If I'll obey his laws each day, as all good children should. So, everything I think and see and hear and do and say, my prayers and every hardship, I offer him this day.
Alrighty then. Let's move to Mein Kampf, and then we'll move to our main event, right, which is Beyond Good and Evil and Julius Evola. Right. So yeah, and of course we're continuing the ideas of Nietzsche and Evola for quite some time now, right? But yeah, let's look at the ideas of Hitler, Adolf Hitler, 1926, right? Mein Kampf, parliamentarianism, right? He says, among the institutions that most clearly showed unmistakable signs of decay, even to the weak-sided Philistine, was that which, of all the institutions of state, should have been the most firmly founded, I mean parliament, or Reichsrat, as it's called in Austria. The pattern for this corporate body was obviously that which existed in England, the land of classic quote-unquote democracy. The whole of that blissful organization was bodily transferred exchange to Vienna. An Austrian counterpart to the British two-chamber system was established, a chamber of deputies and a House of Lords. I was not yet 20 when I first entered the palace of the Franzenstring to watch and listen to the Chamber of Deputies. The first experience aroused in me a profound feeling of repugnance. I always hated the parliament, but not as an institution in itself. On the contrary, as one who cherished ideals of political freedom. I couldn't even imagine any other form of government. In light of my attitude towards the House of Habsburg, I would have thought it a crime against liberty and reason to consider any kind of dictatorship as a possible form of government. I had a certain admiration for the British Parliament, he says, and this contributed to the formation of my opinion. This feeling came about unconsciously, much of it while reading the newspapers when I was young. I couldn't discard the admiration in an instant. The dignified way in which the British House Commons fulfilled its function impressed me greatly, thanks largely to the glowing terms used by Austrian press. Could there be any nobler form of government than self-government by the people? By the people. But I soon became enraged by the hideous spectacle that met my eyes. Several hundred representatives were there to discuss a problem of great economic importance, and each one had the right to have his say. Okay, so here's some information about Hitler. 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 He was born in 1989, Austria. 1909, moves to Vienna, goes to art school. In 1914, he signed up for World War I. The German Depression, lived through the German Depression. In 1919, he joined the DAP, the German Workers' Party. And in 1920, it became the National Socialist DAP and SDAP. Right? So that's how the history of how he developed. So he says that experience of a single day was enough to supply me with food for thought for several weeks afterwards, right? He's talking about the parliament, him looking at the parliament, and he hates the parliament. He's now talking about why he hates parliament, right? He's saying the intellectual level of the debate was quite low. Sometimes the debaters didn't make themselves intelligible at all. Several of those present didn't speak German, but only their Slav vernaculars or dialects. Thus, I had the opportunity of hearing with my own ears what I previously known only reading the newspapers. A turbulent mass of people, all gesticulating and screaming at one another. And with a pathetic old man shaking his bell and making frantic efforts to call the house to order by friendly appeals, exhortations, and grave warnings. I had to laugh. I paid a second visit several weeks later. It was an entirely different picture, almost unrecognizable. The halls were nearly empty. They were sleeping in the other rooms below. Only a few deputies were in their places, yawning in each other's faces. One was speaking. A deputy speaker was in the chair. He looked around with obvious boredom. Then I began to reflect seriously on the whole thing. I went to Parliament. Whenever I had any time to spare, and silently but attentively watched the spectacle, I listened to the debates as far as they could be understood, and I studied the more or less intelligent features of those elected representatives of the various nationalities and composed that motley state. Gradually, I formed my own ideas about what I saw. A year of such quiet observation was sufficient to transform or completely eliminate my former convictions regarding the character of this institution. I no longer oppose merely the perverted form that the principle of parliamentary representation had assumed in Austria. No, it became impossible for me to accept the system in itself. Up to that time, I had believed that the disastrous deficiencies of Austrian parliament were due to the lack of a German majority. But now I recognize that the very essence and form of institution itself was wrong. A number of questions arose in my mind. I studied the democratic principles of majority rule more closely, and I scrutinized no less carefully the intellectual moral worth of the gentlemen who, as the chosen representatives of the nation, were entrusted with the task of making this institution function. Thus I came to know both the institution itself and those in it. And thus I formed a clear and vivid picture of the typical example of that most dignified phenomenon of our time, the parliamentarian. The picture of him that I then formed became deeply engraved in my mind. And I have never altered its essential character. Once again, these object lessons taken from real life save me from getting firmly entangled by a theory that at first glance seems so alluring to many people, though the theory itself is a symptom of human decadence. Western democracy as practiced today is a forerunner of Marxism. In fact, the latter would be inconceivable without the former. Democracy is the breeding ground in which the bacilli of the Marxist world pest can grow and spread. By the introduction of parliamentarianism, democracy produced an abomination of filth and fire, the creative fire of which, however, seems to have died out. Yeah, I'll have to agree with some of the things that Hitler is saying, even though I don't agree with his actions. I don't condone his actions. I don't condone his general ideology, his general opinions, right? Condemn most of what he stands for. Man, I make no bones about that, right? He supported the technical state, right? He supported the technological state, right? He supported scientific advancement, all that stuff, right? He thought Nietzsche's philosophy would work. There's lots of problems with this general philosophy, right? But we could learn from people that we generally disagree with, can't we? Can't we? But he has several other complaints, namely the lack of responsibility and the destruction of the idea of leadership. Right? His complaints are a little bit different, but this idea was unbeknownst to Plato, obviously. Right? He didn't have to deal with Marxist ideology. But here, this idea is very potent, right? That the germ of Marxism is the democratic idea of parliamentarianism, right? Of parliamentarianism. And this is a thing that Plato also points out, is a lack of responsibility. Right? Nobody takes responsibility in the society because everybody's an individual. Right? Lack of responsibility. He says the lack of responsibility, the aspect of the situation that was most thought-provoking to me was the manifest lack of individual responsibility. The parliament takes an action that may have the most devastating consequences, and that nobody bears responsibility for it. No one can be called on account. Can we call the government responsible if in the face of a catastrophe it simply resigns? Or if the coalition is changed? Or even if parliament is dissolved, can a fluctuating majority of people ever be truly responsible for anything? Isn't the idea of responsibility bound to an individual person? See, that's a great paradox, isn't it? Right? In seeking individualism, right, they create a society based on collective ideals, this notion of the collective will, and they lose the notion of individual responsibility as a result. It's quite a paradoxical and wild situation, right? That Nietzsche and Evola also constantly refer to, right? So he says, is it even possible to actually hold the parliamentary leaders accountable for any action that originated the desires of the mass representatives, that was carried out under their direction? Instead of developing constructive ideas and plans, does a true statesman's business really consist in the art of making a whole pack of blockheads understand his projects? Is it really his job to beg and plead so that they will grant him their generous consent? Does it really prove that a statesman is incompetent if he should fail to win over a majority of votes in an assembly that has been called together, as the chance result of an electoral system? Has there ever been a case where such an assembly has worthily appraised a great political concept before that concept was proven a success? The destruction of the idea of leadership. Where can we draw the line between public duty and personal honor? Shouldn't every genuine leader renounce the idea of degrading himself to the level of a political gangster? And on the other hand, doesn't every gangster feel the itch to play politics, quote unquote? Seeing that the final responsibility will never rest with him personally, but rather with some anonymous, unaccountable mob? Doesn't our parliamentary principle of majority rule necessarily lead to the destruction of the idea of leadership? Doesn't anyone honestly believe that human progress originates in the brain of the majority and not in the brain of individual personality? The parliamentary principle of the majority rule rejects the authority of the individual and puts a numerical quota of anonymous heads in its place. In doing so, it contradicts the aristocratic principle, which is a fundamental law of nature. A fundamental law of nature. Though it must be admitted that this principle is not reflected in the decadence of our upper 10,000. The devastating influence of this parliament institution might not easily be recognized by those who read the Jewish press. Unless the reader has learned how to think independently and examine facts for himself. This institution is primarily responsible for the crowded inrush of mediocre people into the field of politics. Confronted with such a phenomenon, a man who is endowed with the real qualities of leadership will be tempted to refrain from taking part in politics. Under these circumstances, the situation doesn't call for a man who has a capacity for constructive statesmanship, but rather for a man who is capable of bargaining for the favor of the majority. The situation appeals to the small minds. It attracts them accordingly. The narrower the spirit and knowledge of our leather handlers, the more accurately can they assess their own situation. They will therefore be all the more inclined to praise a system that doesn't demand creative genius or even high-class talent, but rather the craftiness of an efficient town clerk. Indeed, they value this kind of petty craftiness more than the political genius of a Pericles. Such mediocrity never worries about responsibility. From the beginning, our parliamentarian knows that whatever be the results of this statesmanship, his end is already written in the stars. One day, he will have to clear out and make room for another equally great spirit. It's a sign for our decadent times that the number of eminent statesmen grows as the caliber of individual personalities dwindles. That caliber will inevitably shrink as the individual politician increasingly depends on parliamentary majorities. A man of real political ability will refuse to be the lackey of idiotic incompetence and big mouths. And they, in turn, being the representatives of the majority and hence of stupidity, hate nothing so much as a superior mind. For such an assembly of wise men, it's always a consolation to be led by a person whose intellectual stature is on par with their own. Thus, each one may have the occasional opportunity to shine in debate. And above all, each one feels that he too may rise to the top. If Peter be boss today, then why not Paul tomorrow?
Interesting stuff, folks. But yeah, let's get to some music here. And of course, we'll be back soon with our final installment this evening. Nietzsche and Evola. Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil and Evola. So I greatly thank you guys for joining us here. Powerful reflections this evening, I think. And honestly, you know, I think I talked more than I needed to, for sure. But yeah, we had a little thoughts about what's going on, you know? Actually combine our commentary just on this one show where we only read things, right? And we commented on it once in a while. Combine our commentary in this one stream, and it's worth more than the entire day of all the other panel shows combined. Most likely. Because yeah, as we've continually assessed, like, there's like little to no value out there. Otherwise, we'd be on those panels, right? Hanging out instead of reading and reflecting on various thinkers throughout history. You know. So yeah. Yeah, I wonder what we'll go with here in terms of songs. How about extra thoughts? Because I've given some extra thoughts. You know, we've given some extra thoughts here. We've been pretty thoughtful, so we'll play extra thoughts.
The extra thought that count, coming from Rocky Mount. Spalding basketballs come out the sky, which they bounce. The extra thought that count, that come from Rocky Mount. Spalding basketballs come out the sky, which they bounce. Spirit of the golden Palestinian Indian, the formula's cold. You Simeon, I came from Peru on a choo-choo. To train to bring the go cuckoo. Sit down and make it do what it do. To me, too many Bennett's trying to be GQ. That's not the case. I spit on the main floor, they rap on beat too. I'm all around, translated the vocab, coming male and Hebrew. The extra thought that count, coming from Rocky Mount. Spalding basketballs come out the sky, which they bounce. The extra thought that count, that come from Rocky Mount. Spalding basketballs come out the sky, which they bounce. Anything is possible, maybe a couple of mil from the Paris government might make this a new world event.
when other groups come and leave like tasty cakes, the flavor will still be there. Rhyme sold up in China, spitting phrases, you know I got 2 pair. The extra thought that count, coming from Rocky Mount. 14 basketballs come out the sky, which they bounce. The extra thought that count, that come from Rocky Mount. Spalding basketballs come out the sky, which they bounce. Bounce, 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 bounce. Spalding basketballs make no sound in the forest. I'm solo, around no crowd, with no support. Where they really claim they heard my sound. Illuminatis, I know them. Started off as one, chose the deity's affection. I throw them bows and stomp them. I load them clips and pop one. I'm DITBB, digging the bitches' butts. Still in the crates, but the bitches bring more bucks. I'm a pimp, bitch, with my cut waver when champagne spilling out my cup. Walk with a strut, Will Ball, don't give a fuck. Handle the ball with a Iverson's touch. Jones that smush, still put him in a push. Spin the ball and ring the clutch. The extra thought that count, coming from Rocky Mount. 14 basketballs come out the sky, which they bounce. The extra thought that count, that come from Rocky Mount. Spalding basketballs come out the sky, which they bounce. Which they bounce. Take it how you want. Palm the ball. Come, 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 come. Get it dunk in your face. Dunk in the place. I'm dunking the ace. I dunk you taste. It's the extra thought that counts. Coming from Rocky Mount. Extra thoughts. Get off the couch.
What? All right, let's move on here with some Nietzsche, mate. And yeah, we'll play some more music for you guys. All right. In a little bit here. Don't all leave at once. I mean, gosh. Huh. All right. Yeah, blessings. Chuck McNorris. Chuck McNorris was here. Good stuff, man. Das Gnosticism. We got Calix. We got the homie. Sep. Got Neutral Ground. Lizard Tree. Dark Scribe. And of course, the beautiful Sophia Daisy May. Blessings. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Yeah, 29. Let's do this. We're on paragraph 29. Last time we were here, Reddington was with us. Shout out Reddington. One of the OGs. So it says, it is the business of every few to be independent. It is the privilege of the strong. Whoa. We could see where Hitler was getting some of his ideas, right? Hitler. Right? He says, it is the business of the very few to be independent. It is the privilege of the strong. The privilege of the strong. And whoever attempts it, even with the best right, but without being obliged to do so, provides that he is probably not only strong, but also daring beyond measure. He enters into a labyrinth. He multiplies 1,000-fold the dangers which life in itself already brings with it. Not the least of which is that no one can see how and where he loses his way, becomes isolated, and is torn piecemeal by some minotaur of conscience. Supposing such a one comes to grief, it is so far from the comprehension of men that they neither feel it nor sympathize with it. And he cannot any longer go back. He cannot go back again to the sympathy of men. Our deepest insights must and should appear as follies, and under certain circumstances as crimes, when they come unauthorizedly to the ears of those who are not disposed and predestined for them. The exoteric and the esoteric, as they were formerly distinguished by philosophers among the Indians, as among the Greeks, Persians, Mussulmans. In short, wherever people believed in gradations of rank and not in equality and equal rights. Nietzsche, not a fan of equal rights. Right? He's not a huge fan of equal rights, right? He doesn't like that sort of thing. Are not so much in contradistinction to one another in respect to the exoteric class, standing without and viewing, estimating, measuring, and judging from the outside, and not from the inside. The more essential distinction is that the class in question views things from below upwards, while the esoteric class view things from above downwards. From above downwards. There are heights of the soul from which tragedy itself no longer appears to operate tragically. And if all the woe in the world were taken together, who would dare to decide whether the sight of it would necessarily seduce and constrain to sympathy, and thus to a doubting of the woe?
that which serves a higher class of men for nourishment or refreshment must be almost poison to an entirely different and lower order of human beings. The virtues of the common man would perhaps mean vice and weakness in a philosopher. It might be possible for a highly developed man, supposing him to degenerate and go to ruin, to acquire qualities thereby alone, for the sake of which he would have to be honored as a saint in the lower world into which he had sunk. There are books which have an inverse value for the soul and the health, according as the inferior soul and the lower vitality, or the higher and more powerful, make use of them. In the former case, they are dangerous, disturbing, unsettling books. In the latter case, they are herald calls which summon the bravest to their bravery. Books for the general reader are always ill-smelling books. The odor of paltry people clings to them. Where the populace eat and drink, even where they reverence, it is accustomed to stink. One should not go into churches if one wishes to breathe pure air. In our youthful years, we still venerate and despise, without the art of nuance, which is best gain of life, and we have rightly to do hard penance for having fallen upon men and things with yea and nay. Everything is so arranged that the worst of all tastes, the taste for the unconditional, is cruelly befooled and abused until man learns to introduce a little art into his sentiments and prefers to try conclusions with the artificial as do the real artists of life. The angry and reverent spirit peculiar to youth appears to allow itself no peace until it has suitably falsified men and things, to be able to vent its passion upon them. Youth in itself even is something falsifying and deceptive. Later on, when the youth's soul, tortured by continual disillusions, finally turns suspiciously against itself, still ardent and savage, even in its suspicion and remorse of conscience, how it upbraids itself, how impatiently it tears itself, how it revenges itself for its long self-blinding, as though it had been a voluntary blindness. In this transition, one punishes oneself by distrust of one's sentiments. One tortures one's enthusiasm with doubt. One feels even the good conscience to be a danger, even if it were self-concealment and lassitude of a more refined uprightness, and above all, one espouses principle, the cause against youth. A decade later, one comprehends that all this was also still youth. How y'all doing out there tonight? Yeah, I hope everyone's well. Yeah, very dark-minded. That's true. But this idea that, youth is like self-blinding, it's leads to the distrust of one's sentiments, and And it's this taste for the unconditional. That's what ruins youth. Because he wants to continue with this falsifying nature. I'm saying man should continually maintain his youth in a way, is what he's trying to say, I think. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Sophia. That means a lot to me. Yeah. We're going to be doing another stream tomorrow, 9:15 Eastern time, in which Avian Buddha will be doing a presentation. So he's volunteered to do a presentation that I've been waiting to read. He sent me a PowerPoint presentation that he did, and I haven't got a chance to look at it yet. And I was excited to take a look at it, but he volunteered to present it. So in addition to all the material that we'll have tomorrow on the show, we may have Avian Buddha presenting a very interesting PowerPoint about the problem of technology. Right, me and him have corresponded on that idea for a bit of time now, and we're even reading some of the same books and coming to similar conclusions about these things, right? About the importance of talking about these ideas. Yeah, Nietzsche also thought it was important. Right, he wrote a lot about the problem of technology. Got added stuff. Michael Levin's research. Ooh, I haven't heard that much of Michael Levin, so I'm interested to see. Nice. Okay. Let's continue. 32. Throughout the longest period of human history, one calls its prehistoric period, the value or non-value of an action was inferred from its consequences. Its consequences. The action in itself was not taken into consideration any more than its origin, but pretty much as a China at present, where the distinction or disgrace of a child redounds to its parents. The retro operating power of success or failure was what induced men to think well or ill of an action. Let us call this period of the pre-moral period of mankind. The imperative, know thyself, quote unquote, was then still unknown. In the last 10,000 years, on the other hand, on certain large portions of the earth, one has gradually got so far that one no longer lets consequences of an action, but its origin, decide with regard to its worth. A great achievement, as a whole, an important refinement of vision and of criterion, the unconscious effect of the supremacy of aristocratic values and of the belief in quote unquote origin, the mark of a period, which may be designated in the narrower sense as the moral one. The first attempt at self-knowledge is thereby made. Instead of consequences, the origin. What an inversion of perspective. And assuredly, the inversion affected only after the long struggle of and wavering. To be sure, an ominous new superstition, a peculiar narrowness of interpretation, attained supremacy precisely thereby. The origin of an action was interpreted in most definite sense possible as the origin out of an intention. People were agreed in the belief that the value of an action lay in the value of its intention. The intention as a sole design and antecedent history of an action. Under the influence of the prejudice, moral praise and blame have been bestowed, and men have judged and even philosophized almost up to the present day. Is it not possible, however, that the necessity may now have arisen of making up our minds with regard to the reversing and fundamental shifting of values? Owing to the self-consciousness and acuteness in man, is it not possible that we may be standing on the threshold of a period which to begin would be distinguished negatively as ultra-moral? Nowadays, when at least among us immoralists, the suspicion arises that the decisive value of an action lies precisely in which is not intentional, and that its intentionalness, and that is seen sensible or sensed, quote unquote, in it belongs to its surface or skin, which, like every skin, betrays something but conceals still more. In short, we believe that the intention is only sign or symptom, which first requires an explanation. A sign, moreover, has too many interpretations and consequently hardly any meaning in itself alone. Then morality, in the sense in which it has been understood hitherto as intention morality, has been a prejudice, perhaps a prematureness or preliminariness, probably something of the same rank as astrology or alchemy, but in any sense something which must be surmounted. The surmounting of morality, in a certain sense, even the self-mounting of morality. Let that be the name for the long secret labor, which has been reserved for the most refined, the most upright, also the most wicked consciences of today, as a living touchstone of the soul. Okay. So interesting stuff there. Right? He's saying that this idea of consequence going into the past belonged to the pre-moral period until people developed the notion of intention. And you enter the moral period. And then we go to the ultra-moral period. Which consists in a sort of self-mounting of morality itself. The skin of morality. The appearance of virtue and not virtue itself. And there you have what he considers the immoralist. But yeah, anyways. Let's go to 33. And yeah, we'll go to maybe 42. So we'll read 10 more sections of this. And then we'll go to Evola here. And hopefully that'll only take me 10 minutes. Okay. Hopefully that'll only take me 10 minutes here. So yeah, let's go ahead and do this. Thank you for joining us. It cannot be helped. The sentiment of surrender, of sacrifice for one's neighbor, and all the self-renunciation, morality, which be mercilessly called to account and brought to judgment, just as the aesthetics of disinterested contemplation, quote unquote, under which the emasculation of art nowadays seeks insidiously enough to create itself a good conscience. Yeah, that is pretty annoying. The art for art's sake, disinterested contemplation. It's almost as bad as the knowledge for the sake of knowledge. Which is even worse. Disinterested contemplation. as good conscience. So there's far too much witchery and sugar in the sentiments, quote, for others, unquote, and, quote, not for myself, unquote, for one not needing to be doubly distrustful here, and for one asking promptly, quote, are they not perhaps deceptions, question, unquote, that they please him who has them, and him who enjoys their fruit, and who also the mere spectator, that is still no argument in their favor, but just calls for caution. Let us therefore be cautious. At whatever standpoint of philosophy one may place oneself nowadays, seen from every position the erroneousness of the world in which we think we live is surest and most certain thing our eyes can light upon. We find proof after proof thereof, which would fain allure us into surmises concerning deceptive principle in the nature of things, quote unquote. He who, however, excuse me, he, however, who makes thinking itself, consequently, quote unquote, the spirit, responsible for the falseness of the world. Okay, my throat is getting a little dry. Give me a second, folks. Smoking and reading too much. So where was I? Yes, I was on 33, right? Oh no, wait. Yeah, he, however, who makes thinking itself and consequently the spirit, quote unquote, responsible for the falseness of the world, an honorable exit, which every conscious or unconscious advocatus de avails himself of. He who regards this world, inducing space, time, form, and movement as falsely deduced, would have at least good reason in the end to become distrustful also of all thinking. Has it not hitherto been playing upon us the worst of scurvy tricks? Question. And what guarantee would it give that it would not continue to do what it has always been doing? In all seriousness, the innocence of thinkers has something touching and respect inspiring in it, which even nowadays permits them to wait upon consciousness with the request that it will give them honest answers. For example, whether it be quote unquote real or not, and why it keeps the outer world so resolutely at a distance, and other questions of the same description. The belief in quote immediate certainties, unquote, is a moral naivete, which does honor to us philosophers. But we have now to cease being merely moral men. Apart from morality, such belief is a folly, which does little honor to us. If in middle class life an ever ready distrust is regarded as a sign of a bad character, as the being who has hitherto been most befooled on earth, he is now under obligation to distrustfulness, to the um, to the wickedest squinting out of every abyss of suspicion. Forgive me the joke of this gloomy grimace and turn of expression, for I myself have long ago learned to think and estimate differently with regard to being deceived, deceiving and being deceived, excuse me, and I keep at least a couple of pokes in the ribs ready for the blind rage which philosophers struggle against, being deceived. Why not? There's nothing more than a moral prejudice that truth is worth more than semblance. It is, in fact, the worst proved supposition in the world. So much must be conceded. There could have been no life at all except upon the basis of perspective estimates, and semblances. And if the virtuous enthusiasm and stupidity of many philosophers, one wish to do away altogether with the quote unquote seeming world. Well, granted that you could do that, or at least nothing of your truth, quote unquote, would thereby remain. Indeed, what is it that forces us in general to the supposition that there is an essential supposition of quote unquote true and quote unquote false? Is it not enough to suppose degrees of seemingness? And as it were, lighter and darker shades and tones of semblance, different velours, as the painters say. Why might not the world which concerns us be a fiction? And to anyone who suggested, quote, but to a fiction belongs an originator, unquote, might it not be bluntly replied, why? May not this, quote unquote, belong also to the fiction? Is it not at length permitted to be a little ironical world? A little ironical toward the subject, just as toward the predicate and object. Might not the philosopher elevate himself above faith in grammar, all respect to governesses? But is it not time that philosophy should renounce governess faith? Okay, maybe I'll just leave it there for today. Okay. We'll read the exciting conclusion of this at another time, my friends. Okay. I greatly appreciate your time. But we still have a Vola here. Right? It's taking way more time. I wanted to get to like a couple more pages, but it's just way slow right now. Let me actually see what's going on YouTube. See what everyone's doing. Or at least the people that we're subscribed to. I want to maybe try to go on a panel. I may try to go on a panel. Subtle rounds. Let's see what she's talking about.
But you are able to have a grounded, very strong, centered space, sphere, orb of influence, which helps your physical body to stay healthy. It helps the nervous system, it helps the circulation, it helps the organs, it helps your circuitry of your body, all of the different components run more smoothly together in a more powered up way, I guess. More of your innate capacities could come back online if you hadn't experienced them before when you take some time to do some work on these fields around us. Okay, so talking about Loosh, back to Loosh, and I've always thought of it like how.
Yeah, Subtle Realms. She's pretty smart. I like her show. Crucible. Let's see what good old Crucible's doing. Jose Marcolino versus Andrew Wilson.
I'm doing. Just make a JPEG file and we can print it ourselves. Yeah, but then I won't get any money, stupid. Masterclass is you.
Oh man. Okay, let's see what this guy's doing. I debated both Andrew and Tariaq
as a policy for a solution to homosexuality.
Sure. I mean, that's maybe okay. Like, even incidentally, who gives a shit?
See,
Honestly,
this
like,
is how you say it. Sure.
sure.
Not
Like,
sure. Right? Stop acting gay and making us look bad. Get the fuck your own group.
yeah. So I just don't think it really. Cause the thing is that if that's the case, I like. There are people here, right? So I live in a pretty, I don't know. I live in Miami, so it has
You're not going to stop acting gay?
Come on, pretty boy.
Like, do you think I'm just trolling here right now? No, because you're the first person I've actually done this with, because I've had enough. When I thought you were gay when I met you before, so I kind of was cool with you, but now I find out you're just...
The 10th man guy's like, he gets fired up and then starts yelling at people. That's kind of like his bit. But yeah, some of the people on these panels have like recurring, behaviors. Right?
The movie Woodstock.
Yeah.
Compiled footage and everything.
I think I've watched it. Yeah.
Yeah, I might actually go on this show afterwards. Sovereign Soul. I've been wanting to go on this show for real. Yeah.
4 hours long.
Yeah, it's a few hours long.
4 hours, 3. Yeah.
Some of the footage was burned in a fire. They found a bunch of extra footage
with the master footage.
Yeah, the one with Mountain, a bunch of Mountain's performance was burned, and they found a bunch of film. They
call it debriefing, and they told me
you got to do that when you get interviewed by them as well.
See,
but they said you can talk about
Kazumi. He said he was part of a show that had a large production, or like it was part of a large production. I don't know what his background is, but yeah, this whole type of Joe Cool has a pretty big channel too, honestly. But yeah, we've talked to Joe Cool several times. We've never talked to Kazumi, as far as I know. Right, he doesn't come around here. But yeah, the rest of these people, I mean, I'm really. Except for Bass Ackwards. He watches our channel. So yeah, this guy's pretty cool.
Can't see much difference between the dark and light. I feel the wind, I taste the rain. Never in my mind to cause so much pain. Comes a time when the blind man takes your hand, says, don't you see?
All right, let's try to look this up.
Make it sunlight on the dreams you still believe, and don't give it up. You got an empty cup.
Yeah, I mean, oh yeah, I forgot to look at Modern Men. Let's see if they're talking about me on Modern Men.
What's up, dog?
Okay. Hey, Landry, I've seen security researcher is blocked as well.
You got blocked?
Because you gave me the wrench and it says show message or something.
Oh yeah, this is
And
where
I'm
he
timed
came
out
up.
again.
You guys are how? I thought
Wait,
you
what?
you had a wrench. You got timed out even though you have a wrench. Go ahead and tell us, what we're doing
He goes
wrong and
off
how
the-
we're
Off with me all the time.
good. Well, that's great.
And the
Well, could it be
I came
Dennis,
back
that you're
to,
not disagreeing with him?
sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh,
I
this
didn't-
is why RT came to troll the chat here. Is because of this little interaction. So let's see what they actually said, because he came in, started trolling the chat. I had to just ban the old man. First, I had to like try to talk some sense into him for like a little while, but then he became really recalcitrant and aggressive, and I was like, all right, dude, if you're just gonna keep saying the same thing and spam the chat, with like a paragraph and a half of the same fucking stupid shit, I'm gonna have to just hide you on the channel. You know what I mean?
I mean to interrupt your first sentence with the middle of mine.
Sorry.
Oh, that was cute. But what I'm saying is, it could be because you're not challenging or you're not disagreeing with what he's saying. Or
Of course we disagree. We don't agree on everything. Who does that?
Okay.
I know what you mean though, but say okay. So yes, I am from LA, Monster.
And I can't. I was AFK, so I didn't hear anything. But when I came back, I heard RT passing.
Yeah, we're gonna have to like this video, because this video is just straight free promotion for the Machine Lives. As long as they have channels talking about us all day. They got people popping in here. So we set this man on a journey to find out more about us. And yeah. I appreciate all the people here, but yeah, let's move to Evola here, man. I mean, because I'm excited to see what else Evola's got to say here, you know? Okay, let me see where this goes. Yeah, it looks like we can't. I'm trying to find the one that we were already looking at. Okay, let's just go to this one instead. Fuck it. Okay, let's do this.
Whitman's, not of the optimistic and hopeful world of the young American democracy, but of a world in collapse. Beside Dos Passos and others of the same group, the early Henry Miller may be called the spiritual father of the currents under discussion. It has been said of him that he is more than a writer or an artist, a kind of collective phenomenon of his epoch, an incarnate and vociferous phenomenon, a raw manifestation of the anguish, the furious despair, and the infinite horror extending behind the crumbling facade. It is the sense of a tabula rasa, the cosmic silence, the void, the end of a whole epoch, in a prophet who proclaims the end of a world at the very moment when it is flowering and radiating, at the apogee of its grandeur and its pestilential contagion. Miller himself wrote these characteristic words: "From the beginning it was never anything but chaos, it was a fluid which enveloped me, which I breathed in through the gills." A stone forest, the center of which was chaos, is the sensation of the ambience in which today's man moves. Sometimes in the dead center, in that very heart of chaos, I danced or drank myself silly, or I made love, or I befriended someone. Or I planned a new life, but it was all chaos, all stone, and all hopeless and bewildering. A partly convergent testimony from another direction is that which Hermann Hesse puts into the mouth of one of his characters: "I'd rather feel burned by a diabolic pain than to live in these sanely temperate surroundings." A wild desire flares up in me for intense emotions, sensations, a rage against this whole toneless, flat, normal, sterilized life, and a wish to destroy something, perhaps a warehouse, a cathedral, or myself, and to commit outrageous follies. This in fact is what I have always most hated, abhorred, and cursed: this satisfaction, this complacent healthiness, this plump bourgeois optimism, this life of the mediocre, normal, common man. Paul van den Bosch, in his L'Enfant de l'Absurde, wrote, "We are the ghosts of a war that we have not fought." Having opened our eyes on a disenchanted world, we are more than any others the children of the absurd. On certain days, the senselessness of the world weighs on us like a deformity. It seems to us that God has died of old age, and we exist without a goal. We are not embittered, we start from zero. We were born among the ruins. When we were born, the gold was already transmuted into lead. The heritage of the precursors of European nihilism has largely been translated, in these movements of ruined youth, into the crude forms of life as it is lived. An important trait here is the absence of any social revolutionary motive and the belief that no organized action can change things. That is the difference from the left-wing intellectuals who condemn bourgeois society, and from the nihilists of the past. Work, read, prepare in groups, believe, then have your back broken. No thanks, that's not for me, says one of Kerouac's characters. This is the end result at which the revolution of the left has practically arrived after its triumph, after passing the phase of simple revolt. Camus made it quite plain after the period of his communist illusions: the revolution has betrayed its origins with the constitution of new yokes and a new conformism, more obtuse and absurd than ever. It is not necessary to dwell any further on these testimonies of a traumatized existence, nor on those whom one might call the martyrs of modern progress. As I have said, all that interests us here is their value as symptomatic indices of the times. The forms mentioned here have also degenerated into extravagant and ephemeral fashions. But there is no denying the causal and necessary connection that unites them to the world where God is dead and no substitute has yet been found for him. When these forms pass, others of the same type will certainly crop up, according to circumstances, until the present cycle is exhausted. Chapter 5. Disguises of European Nihilism. The socio-economic myth and the protest movement. It is an important fact that some of the young people in crisis have shown such indifference to the prospects of social revolution. But now it is time to broaden our horizons by showing the particular type of evasion and anesthetization on the part of a humanity that has lost the meaning of existence, that lurks behind the varieties of the modern socio-economic myth, both that of Western prosperity and that of Marxist communist ideology. In both cases, we still find ourselves within the orbit of nihilism, and a nihilism of far more spectacular proportions than those of the extremist groups where the crisis remains acute and undisguised. I have already shown that the actual basis of the myth in question is the interpretation, on the part of a well-organized historiography, of the processes that prepared for European nihilism as constituting progress. This basis is essentially identical both in the Western myth and in that of communism. But the two of them are in a kind of dialectical relationship, which reveals their true existential significance. It is easier to find the elements that betray this ultimate sense in the communist myth, because of its blatant coarseness and its more explicit reference to the basic motive, the economy. As is well known, the communist myth takes the form of a violent polemic against all the phenomena of spiritual crisis that I have treated up to now. These phenomena are recognized, certainly, but are blamed on bourgeois decadence, the fin de siècle, and anarchic individualism, the symptoms of bourgeois elements alienated from reality. These are supposed to be the terminal stages of decomposition of a doomed economic system, that of capitalism. The crisis is thus presented exclusively as one of values and ideals serving as superstructure to that system, which, having become hypocritical and deceptive, have nothing more to do with the practical conduct of individuals or with the driving forces of the epoch. Humanity's existential lesion is generally explained as an effect of material, economic organization in a society such as the capitalist one. The true remedy, the start of a new and authentic humanism, a human integrity and a happiness never known before, would then be furnished by the setting up of a different socio-economic system, by the abolition of capitalism, and by the institution of a communist society of workers, such as is taking place in the Soviet area. Karl Marx had already praised in communism the real appropriation of the human essence on the part of man and for the sake of man, the return of man to himself as a social being, thus as a human man, seeing in it the equivalent of a perfect naturalism, and even a true humanism. In its radical forms, wherever this myth is affirmed through the control of movements, organizations, and people, it is linked to a corresponding education, a sort of psychic lobotomy intended methodically to neutralize and infantilize any form of higher sensibility and interest, every way of thought that is not in terms of the economy and socio-economic processes. Behind the myth is the most terrible void, which acts as the worst opiate yet administered to a rootless humanity. Yet this deception is no different from the myth of prosperity, especially in the form it has taken in the West. Oblivious of the fact that they are living on a volcano, materially, politically, and in relation to the struggle for world domination, Westerners enjoy a technological euphoria, encouraged by the prospects of the second industrial revolution of the atomic age. I have mentioned a type of dialectic that leads to the demolition of this theory from the inside, insofar as in the communist world the myth has drawn most of its energy from a misrepresentation. The idea of states in which individual problems and decadent crises no longer exist is presented as something only to be attained in the future. Whereas these are the very conditions that already obtain in the West and the Nordic countries. It is the fascination of a goal that vanishes at the moment one reaches it. In fact, the future socio-economic ideal of proletarian humanity already exists, spiritually bought and paid for, in Western society, where, to the shame of Marx and Engels' prognosis, a climate of prosperity has spread to vast social strata in the form of a plentiful, easy, and comfortable existence, a condition that Marxism does not condemn as such, but only because it thinks of it as the privilege of an upper class of capitalist exploiters, not as the common property of a homogenized society. But the horizons are essentially the same, and in regard to recent developments, we shall see what conclusions the so-called protest movement has drawn from them. At all events, the error and the illusion are the same in both socio-economic ideologies, namely the serious assumption that existential misery can be reduced to suffering in one way or another from material want, and to impoverishment due to a given socio-economic system. They assume that misery is greater among the disinherited or the proletariat than among those living in prosperous or privileged economic conditions, and that it will consequently diminish with the freedom from want and the general advance of the material conditions of existence. The truth of the matter is that the meaning of existence can be lacking as much in one group as in the other, and that there is no correlation between material and spiritual misery. Only to the lowest and dullest levels of society can one preach the formula for all human happiness and wholeness as the well-named animal ideal, a well-being that is little better than bovine. Hegel rightly wrote that the epochs of material well-being are blank pages in the history book, and Toynbee has shown that the challenge to mankind of environmentally and spiritually harsh and problematic conditions is often the incentive that awakens the creative energies of civilization. In some cases, it is not paradoxical to say that the man of goodwill should try to make life difficult for his neighbor. It is a commonplace that all the higher virtues attenuate and atrophy under easy conditions, when man is not forced to prove himself in some way, and in the final analysis it does not matter in such situations if a good number fall away and are lost through natural selection. André Breton was right when he wrote that we must prevent the artificial precariousness of social conditions from concealing the real precariousness of the human condition. But to avoid straying too far from my argument, the point is that the most acute forms of the modern existential crisis are appearing today at the margin of a civilization of prosperity, as witness the currents in the new generation that have been described. One sees their rebellion, disgust, and anger manifesting not in a wretched and oppressed subproletariat but often in young people who lack nothing, even in millionaires' children. And among other things it is a significant fact, statistically proven, that suicide is much rarer in poor countries than in rich ones, showing that the problematic life is felt more in the latter than in the former. Blank despair can occur right up to the finishing post of socio-economic messianism, as in the musical comedy about a utopian island where they have everything, fun, women, and whiskey, but also the ever-recurrent sense of the emptiness of existence, the sense that something is still missing. There exists, therefore, no correlation, except possibly a negative one, between the meaning of life and conditions of economic well-being. There is a famous example, not recent but from the traditional world, of the Buddha Shakyamuni. He who on a metaphysical plane radically denounced the emptiness of existence and the deceptions of the God of life, pointing out the way of spiritual awakening, was not a victim of oppression and hunger, not a representative of social strata like the plebeians of the Roman Empire, to whom the revolutionary sermons of Christianity were first addressed. No, he was of the race of princes, in all the splendor of his power and all the fullness of his youth. The true significance of the socio-economic myth, in any of its forms, is as a means of internal anesthetization or prophylaxis, aimed at evading the problem of an existence robbed of any meaning, and at consolidating in every way the fundamental insignificance of modern man's life. We may therefore speak either of an opiate that is much more real than that which, according to the Marxists, was fed to a humanity as yet unillumined and unevolved, mystified by religious beliefs, or, from another point of view, of the organized method of an active nihilism. The prospects in a goodly part of today's world are more or less those that Zarathustra attributed to the last man. The time is near of the most despicable of men, who can no longer despise himself, the last man of the tenacious and pullulating race. We have invented happiness, say the last men with a wink, having abandoned the lands where life is hard. In this context, there is another more recent phenomenon, that is heavy with significance, that of the so-called global protest movement. It took its rise in part from the order of ideas already mentioned. In the wake of theories such as Marcuse's, it came to the conclusion there is a basic similarity, in terms of technological consumer society, between the system of advanced communist countries and that of the capitalist world, because in the former, the original impulse of the proletarian revolution is much diminished. This impulse has now been realized, inasmuch as the working class has entered the consumer system, being assured of a lifestyle that is no longer proletarian but bourgeois, the very thing whose absence was the incentive for revolution. But alongside this convergence there has become visible the conditioning power of one and the same system, manifesting as the tendency to destroy all the higher values of life and personality. At the level more or less corresponding to the last man foreseen by Nietzsche, the individual in contemporary consumer society reckons that it would be too expensive, indeed absurd, to do without the comfort and well-being that this evolved society offers him, merely for the sake of an abstract freedom. Thus he accepts with a good grace all the leveling conditionings of the system. This realization has caused a bypassing of revolutionary Marxism, now deprived of its original motive force, in favor of a global protest against the system. This movement, however, also lacks any higher principle. It is irrational, anarchic, and instinctive in character. For want of anything else, it calls on the abject minorities of outsiders, on the excluded and rejected, sometimes even on the third world, in which case Marxist fantasies reappear, and on the blacks, as being the only revolutionary potential. But it stands under the sign of nothingness. It is a hysterical revolution of the void and the underground, of maddened wasps trapped in a glass jar, who throw themselves frenetically against the walls. In all of this it confirms in another way the general nihilistic character of the epoch, and indeed on a much larger scale, for the current protest is no longer that of the individuals and small groups mentioned earlier, whose intellectual level was indubitably higher. Another point should be mentioned, at least cursorily, in the current climate of dissolution. The collapse of superstructures, of all that can henceforth only be regarded as superstructures, did not manifest only in the sociological form of denouncing the lies and hypocrisy of bourgeois life, as in Max Nordau, or as in the words of Relling to Gregers in Ibsen, why do you use that odd word ideals? We have our own perfectly good word, lies, or in moral and philosophical nihilism. It is prolonged and completed today by means of a science that, though false and contaminating if applied to men of other times and other civilizations, has the power of persuasion when applied to traumatized modern man. This science is none other than psychoanalysis. The impassioned effort of that philosopher who sought out the secret origin, the genealogy of predominant moral values at the very roots of all those vital impulses that morality avoids or condemns, who sought thus to naturalize morality by denying it any autonomous or preeminent dignity. This impassioned effort has given place to the cold, cynical, and scientific methods of depth psychology, of the exploration of the subconscious and the unconscious. In the latter, the irrational subsoil of existence, it has recognized the motive force essential to the whole life of the soul. From that it deduces the proofs that make an illusion of the upper world of moral and social conscience with all its values, all its inhibitions and prohibitions, and its hysterical will to dominate. Meanwhile, in the subterranean zone nothing is at work but a mess of compulsions toward pleasure and death, lust, princip and todistria. This, as everyone knows, is the essence of Freudianism. Other psychoanalytic currents that diverge in part from Freud are not substantially different. The evident theme in all of them is the regression to the psychic subsoil, together with a profound traumatization of the human personality. It is one further aspect of contemporary nihilism, and, moreover, the symptom of a sickly consciousness, too weak to hold in check the lower regions of the soul with their so-called archetypes, and which might well be compared to Goethe's world of the mothers. It is hardly worth pointing out how these destructions converge with the atmosphere of another typical genre of contemporary literature, in which the sense of the speciality of existence is associated with that of an obscure, incomprehensible destiny, a fatality, and an absurd condemnation hanging over man's eternal solitude, taken to be the actual human condition. It is like the sense of an incomprehensible foundation of human life that fades into impenetrable and anguish-filled darkness. This theme, shown in its typical form by Kafka, is not foreign to speculative existentialism, to which I shall return in due course. What I wish to underline at this point is that we are not dealing with a truth discovered by someone who has been able to feel more and see more deeply. It is merely what is perceived in the very atmosphere of European nihilism, and of a humanity that has taken shape after the death of God. Chapter 6. Active Nihilism. Nietzsche. We can now return to the problem that really interests us. In all the critical situations treated up to now, their predominant trait is that of being the objects, indeed the victims, of the destructive processes set in motion, processes which are simply suffered by current humanity. This holds good both for those who have adapted to a life based on nothing and lacking any true direction, helping themselves with a system of anesthetics and surrogates, and eventually resorting to the surviving forms of a secure bourgeois existence, and for those who feel the existential crisis of modern man in all of their being, and are consequently driven toward the kinds of revolt or risky existence that were mentioned above. This applies, therefore, to the vast majority of our contemporaries. In contrast, there is a different and much smaller category of modern men who, instead of submitting to the nihilist processes, seek to accept them actively. In particular, there are those who not only admit that the processes of dissolution are irreversible and that there is no going back, but who would not want to follow that path even if it existed. They willingly accept their condition of being without support or roots. Then the problem arises of how far the negative can be transformed into something positive. For someone who has the necessary character to assume such an attitude, the possibility opens of a new interpretation of the adventure of mankind wanting to be free, and of the crisis that is the consequence of this adventure. Thus arises the idea of a trial, and of destructions that are simply the consequence of not being equal to it, or as one might say, not being equal to one's own action. Those who are interested may recall the ancient myths concerning an audacious sacrilege in which it is not the sacrilege in itself that brings about the ruin of some symbolic personage, but lack of the necessary dignity or strength to accomplish an act that frees one from the divine bonds. The special human type who concerns us here and who partially fits the category in question may adopt the same point of view. As we recall, his differentiated character consists in facing the problems of modern man without being a modern man himself. He belongs to a different world and preserves within himself a different existential dimension. Unlike the others, his problem is not the dramatic search for a basis, in principle, he already possesses one, but that of his own expression and confirmation in the modern epoch, in his life here and now. With this human type in mind, let us examine the theme of positive nihilism, or, if one prefers, the transition to the post-nihilist stage. Since it is better to do so from a standpoint inside the modern world, rather than outside it, we can take as a provisional basis some of Nietzsche's fundamental ideas, to test their solidity. We may find, in fact, that the more recent exponents of modern thought have gone little further than Nietzsche in their search for a new meaning of life, despite all that is inconsistent and negative in his philosophy. Nietzsche considered himself the first perfect nihilist in Europe, because he has already overcome nihilism, having lived it in his soul, having it behind himself, beneath himself, outside himself. Having seen that nihilism is the final, logical conclusion of our great values and ideals, and having asserted that we must pass through this nihilism in order to grasp the true nature of the values of the past, he nevertheless considered nihilism as a pathological, transitional stage and proclaimed the counter-movement that was destined to supplant it, without giving up the ground already won. Nietzsche showed that the point at which one realizes that God is dead, that the whole world of spirit, of good and evil, is only an illusion, and that the only true world is that which was negated or rejected in the name of the former, is the crux of a decisive test. The weak shatter, the strong destroy what does not shatter them, while those stronger still go beyond the values that once served them. Nietzsche calls this the tragic phase of nihilism, which leads to a reversal of perspectives. Nihilism at this point appears as a sign of strength, signifying that the power to create, to will, has developed far enough that one has no further need for this general interpretation of existence, of this introduction of a meaning into it. It is a measure of one's strength of will to know how far one can do without a meaning to things, how far one can bear to live in a meaningless world, for then one will organize part of it. Nietzsche calls this positive pessimism, or the pessimism of strength, and makes it the premise of a higher ethic. If at first man needed a god, now he is thrilled with a universal, godless disorder, with a world of chance, where the fearful, the ambiguous, and the seductive are part of his very existence. In this world once again made pure and uniquely itself he stands erect, conqueror of God and of nothingness. The problem of the meaning of life is thus resolved with the affirmation that life is and can be a value in itself. This brings us to the precise point made above. The significance of all the crises of recent times can be summarized as follows: a man wanted to be free, for whom a life of freedom could spell only ruin. To say God is dead is only an emotional way of stating the basic fact of the epoch. But Nietzsche himself remarks that having killed God, wasn't that perhaps rather too grand of us? Shouldn't we become gods in order to be worthy of it? After recognizing that nothing exists, all is permitted, and the freedom of the spirit, the inevitable consequence is the challenge. Now prove the nobility of your nature. A famous passage of Zarathustra gives the most pregnant formulation to the essence of the crisis. You call yourself free. Let me hear your ruling thoughts, and not that you have escaped bondage. Are you one who deserved to escape from it? There are many who threw away their only worth when they threw away their servitude. Free from what? Why should Zarathustra care? Your eyes should answer plainly, free for what? You and Zarathustra warns that it will be terrible to be alone, without any laws from above oneself, alone with one's own freedom in a desert place and an icy air, judge and avenger of one's own law. For him who only acquires any worth by serving, for him who had in his bonds not a cause of paralysis but a support, solitude appears as a curse, he loses courage and his initial pride deflates. These are the sentiments, continues Zarathustra, that then assail the free man, and that will not fail to kill him if he does not kill them first. In precise terms, and from a higher point of view, this is the essential ground of modern man's unhappiness. Dostoevsky points out the same thing in analogous fashion, it is Kirillov's doctrine. The framework is identical, man only invented God so that he could live without killing himself. And this is the history of mankind from its origins up to the present day, says Kirillov. The implication is plain, it is a necessity for man to have a center, a basic value. When he did not find it within himself, he placed it outside himself, projecting it onto God, whom he supposed to exist, certainly, but incarnated in another, and faith in this other provisionally solved the existential problem. Naturally this is not really, as Kirillov says, the whole meaning of the history of mankind, it is only that of the devotional phase of a theistic religion, a phase that already represents a disintegration of the world of tradition and precedes the critical point of metaphysical breakdown of which I have spoken. The eyes of the free man Kirillov are open, I don't want to believe. I know that God doesn't exist, and can't exist. The consequence is therefore if God does not exist, I am God, to recognize that there is no God, and not to recognize at the same time that one has become God is an absurdity and an incongruity, because otherwise one would not fail to kill oneself. One can dispense with the suicide that is an obsession of Kirillov's lucid folly, and speak simply of breakdown, disintegration, becoming lost in meaninglessness. In the face of this situation, terror and anguish arise, he's like a wretch who has received a legacy but takes fright and won't set his hand to it, because he doesn't think himself worthy of it. We should not take seriously the act with which Kirillov thinks he can destroy his terror in the face of the divine legacy that he should accept, demonstrating at the same time his divinity. And we can set aside all this emphatic talk of God and being God, for the real problem posed here is one of values, and of being free for what? Nothing better characterizes failure in the crucial test, the negative result of the nihilistic experience, than the sentiment expressed by Sartre in these words, we are condemned to be free. Man takes absolute freedom for himself, but he can only feel this freedom as a condemnation. Metaphysical anguish is its counterpart. Later we shall examine the specific themes of existentialism. For now, we shall see what can be retained of Nietzsche's views, not as a nihilist but as one who thought that he had left nihilism behind him, and thus created the premises for a higher existence and a new state of health. Once the idols have fallen, good and evil have been surpassed, along with all the surrogates of the old God, and the mist has lifted from one's eyes, nothing is left to Nietzsche but this world, life, the body, he remains faithful to the earth. Thereupon, as we know, the theme of the Superman appears. God is dead, now we want the Superman to come. The Superman will be the meaning of the earth, the justification of existence. Man is a bridge, not a goal, a rope stretched between the brute and the Superman, a rope stretched above an abyss. This is not the place for a deep analysis of the manifold and divergent themes that crystallize in Nietzsche's work around this central motif. The essential can be spelled out as follows. The negative, destructive phase of Nietzsche's thought ends with the affirmation of immanence. All transcendent values, systems of ends and of higher truths, are interpreted as functions of life. in its turn, the essence of life, and more generally of nature, is the will to power. The Superman is also defined as a function of the will to power and domination. One can see from this that Nietzsche's nihilism stops halfway. It sets up a new table of values, including a good and an evil. It presents a new ideal with dogmatic affirmation, whereas in reality this ideal is only one of many that could take shape in life, and which is not in fact justified in and of itself, without a particular choice and without faith in it. The fact that the fixed point of reference set up beyond nihilism lacks a true foundation so long as one insists on pure immanence is already apparent in the part of Nietzsche's thought that deals with historical criticism and sociology. The entire world of higher values is interpreted there as reflecting a decadence. But at the same time these values are seen as the weapons of a hidden will to power on the part of a certain human group, which has used them to hamper another group, whose life and ideals resemble those of the Superman. The instinct of decadence itself is then presented as a special variety of the will to power. Now, it is obvious that in function of a mere will to power, all distinctions vanish, there are no more supermen or sheepmen, neither affirmers nor negators of life. There is only a variety of techniques, of means, far from being reducible to sheer physical force, tending to make one human class or another prevail, means that are indiscriminately called good in proportion to their success. If in life and the history of civilization there exist phases of rise and decline, phases of creation and destruction and decadence, what authorizes us to ascribe value to one rather than to the others? Why should decadence be an evil? It is all life, and all justifiable in terms of life, if this is truly taken in its irrational, naked reality, outside any theology or teleology, as Nietzsche would have wished. Even.
Demystify the mummy within. If you ain't Hotep, then Hotep, I step to your friend. Parable of the wind, blue light through to the end. Endless nights, kicks and fights against time and the friends. Slowly day and night blend, twilight takes form and then open skies, sprouts and eyes, solo singular sin. Down the glance up a grin, half the women and men. Children born of the morn, grow until daylight's in. Children born of the wind, take the night as their friend. Starlit sky, many-eyed, wonder of the within. Fear original sin, death nowhere near the end. Once upon break of dawn, early light paper thin.
Now when my hopes and my bits set, I don't say don't get took for what you bad. And all my children move one way, and beware of the lyrical gunplay. Now when my hopes and my bits set, I don't say don't get took for what we bad. And all my children move one way, and beware of the lyrical gunplay.
The corner, I smoke for weeks. Deadpan like dead man through chimney peaks. I streak the skyline, I blew through birds. High notes, I stay slow, I'm lost for words. The storefront preacher, the Sunday best. The dangling cross between legs and chest. The country farmer, the hold down champ. The rhythmic armor, the cosmic dance. The buck and gully, the native son. Bigger and deafer, the freshest one. The soul increases, the flavor drills. The confidence loaded through dollar bills. The fuck I care for, the bold-faced lie. The been there and done that, the do or die. The dirty, the filthy clean. Thugged out and nerdy, no in between.
Now when my hopes and my bits set, I don't say don't get took for what you bad. And all my children move one way, and beware of the lyrical gunplay. Now when my hopes and my bits set, I don't say don't get took for what we bad. And all my children move one way, and beware of the lyrical gunplay.
The blackest berry, the sweetest juice. A complex nigga born a simple truth. The solar polar, the chosen side. The black-faced mammy of the bluest eye. The battered woman, the dream deferred. Now caught up and paid in full, that's my word. The jungle brother, the slime stone. The rock hard nigga give a dog a bone. The marrow's marrow, the newest breed. The headline merger between word and deed. The search for balance, a quest for peace. A tribe called nigga, what the chief. The distant lover, the close-up clown. The iced-out grill with the school-faced frown. A wealth of violence, a violent wealth. You caught up, nigga, better watch your health.
Now when my hopes and my bits set, I don't say don't get took for what you bad. And all my children move one way, and beware of the lyrical gunplay. Now when my hopes and my bits set, I don't say don't get took for what we bad. And all my children move one way, and beware of the lyrical gunplay.
The beat is dope, the junkie nod. The use of break beats to beat the odds. The odds are even, I pay for rocks. Rock smash scissors, nigga trigger glocks. The blackened target, the dick long chain. Niggas kill niggas in Jesus' name. The blackened target, the dick long chain. Niggas kill niggas in Jesus' name. 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 Niggas kill niggas.
When you see my foot rapidly tapping upon the floorboards, you take it as my not being amused with the display. When you feel my finger rapidly tapping upon your scully, you should pack a bag with food and clothes and walk the other way. Now for the Club Bloodhound serendipity movement, alien, the triplicate stooge counterculture. 41st thief, dispatch sheep to shake a stick at. My fins break water, circling shoulder chips, dipped in a wheel to rape the orchard. Fresh, liquor bowl, Eidolon killing, day dripping a beaker, spilling right. I treat the cursed burners of my zen like pendulums and let them count the seconds till the big hand strikes the scissor clip the string in your box. I got that 1,000 yards to stare. The hounds howl, Jackal Walker stripped the market bare. Dig it, it's all modern logistics. See, the slaves work for assholes and the assholes work for kings, and the kings work for hookers, cocaine and four-finger rings. Snake tongue hung a rung above the rest, slung while a pink lung stung and sunk to an ebony vest. Bad spirit, bad pyramids rust in the shadows of this cat on a hot tin something, spitting disgusting. Ready to rain, Indian summer under a fragile pain comforter. Stained glass palace, brain gas baggage. Summer separate pizzas equals rain, class, and balance on a pallet hit a snake bone. Craft work, a poem, kill 'em all. Jiggamorpha with aesthetic Mach 20. 34. Why money, what you up to? I was just about trying to graduate to gumshoe. Here to preach the great American fuck you. Fuck you. Aesop rock dropped his lip to the floor. Shoved the milestones in his mouth. Chewed him up and spit the core. Saw the captives of the slapstick handshake trade embargo. Crushed on a fortune cookie tomorrow. Opening question mark parcels. I get off the list for the future's modest Samaritans by exposing the vain roots of the here and now's plain truths, but I won't. Life lessons curdle in the stomach prior to sinking to the sense capsules as discipline fractals. Now forced necessity says let the brain jolt awkward, set it free. Just take note if he walks irrelevant. Use me, for example, if Moses had gills, he could have fished without the split C macho circus, but he didn't. It don't really make a difference. I'm cooked. I've been around the universe twice. The first time I sat and looked, the second time I broke the galaxy. Now I walk with a limp cause my foot's coated in casualties. A small price to pay for a life of greetings, your majesty. Spit a billion apple seeds to honor his vision of underprivileged children plucking the fruits in their ripest hour. But the dreams have gone sour. The cowards dug up the roots, weaved the leaves, hung up a noose and sacrificed their freedom vouchers. He did it in the name of Christ. She did it for the grunt work. He did it for the star cluster that he'd named after his mother. Now it's touching, and I guess it makes a great story to tell, but I'd rather be the wisher than the penny in the well. Kill a few, kill 'em all, fill 'em all with guilt. Watch and pray while you walk away on stilts. Kill 'em all, kill a few, kill 'em all, fill 'em all with guilt. Watch and pray while you walk away on stilts. Kill 'em all, kill a few, kill 'em all, fill 'em all with guilt. Watch and pray while you walk away on stilts. Kill 'em all, kill a few, kill 'em all, fill 'em all with guilt. Watch and pray while you walk away on stilts. Kill 'em all. When you see my foot rapidly tapping upon the floorboard, take it as
let's fucking go. Hey, you check it on. Snipers on the roof, vipers in the room, feelings of death. Watch the Grim Reaper gloom. Grim Reaper out his tomb. Voluptuous sounds of doom. Voluptuous clouds that gloom. Ruptures in the roots. Yggdrasil. For wisdom, one must know how to move the well of Mimir. Not many can walk in these shoes. The wolf is Fenrir. Not many can rhyme against the tooth. Wisdom is for fools. Knowledge is for ghouls. This world is just for the mules. This world is just a tool. Like a piece when it fires leaves blood in pools, leaves thugs with no jewels. The art is criminal. The thug is traveling a risky road, drinking mead while whistling for hoes. Nah, fuck it, I'm rhyming while preparing product on the stove. Darkness, yeah, let's go. Welcome to the cloud apocalypse. There's a lot of fight in this kid. Welcome to the clout Armageddon. There's a lot of clips in this bitch. Welcome to the final bout. We about to unload this trick. Darkness. Knowledge is power. The knowledge they bring is foul. This is knowledge for those that have witnessed the hour. A rare breed with rare rhymes. I did fair time. The sheep desire to stay blind. I told my comrades don't fall for vain eyes. I told my comrades don't fall for stage lies. Say it with pride. I ride, they die. The Black Panther, I side with the dark. The covenant in the ark. Heaven is just the abstinence from being a bitch. Nobody bark. Everybody hush. They look up to no art. A fake renaissance. They dressed it up. Used the underground from the start. Lit a fire. Burned it out. Lit a pyre. Burned it for clout. Who's this about? Nobody specific. Every rapper. Cause to me they're all targets. Fuck your favorite. Welcome to the cloud apocalypse, bitch. Darkness.
I can hear the scratch of rat claws within the stone wall.
Welcome to the cloud apocalypse. There's a lot of fight in this kid. Welcome to the clout Armageddon. There's a lot of clips in this bitch. Welcome to the final bout. We about to unload this trick. Darkness.
with screws, tank with skills, I drill like platoon leaders. Niggas can people from 6 meters. My shit's supreme in structure, putting plugs in rap slugs in your set, ready to go. Throw the brick at your glass house, watch them out of shadow, my chatter fall from idle raw recital. Yo, battle no cranks like Barnum and Bailey, Mr. Cole's Haley's coming, watch me pop it like a pill. Pulling black beauties and caramel cuties, Dewey and Queens, do me much justice. However, that's another chapter. After MCs, like a bounty, you got a price on your head, I'll make you famous and dead. Brandish my lyrical like my pistol. MCs are red like bloody jam back, your crew bleeds like demons. Those psychos complaining about the pain that I give. My rap bust up your lungs, breaks your ribs. I cause the chemist. Internal damage, fucking up cerebrums. And chili, I got that witty winter cola bones. My shit dope is blows on Cicero. Text that before you seek. I destroy the decoy. All clones get their head blown off when the blowtorch speaks. People listen like the important. When MCs like bitch with a motherfucking apple between their lips. Yo, sounds ricochet through domes claiming victims. Everything's fake 'cause I'm a fucking inmate. Now make them feel this article might be critical to MC sounding pitiful, but I do not give one fuck. Now it's on when the beat breaks, he break. When my mic generate enough heat to bait, I jack for soul. So throw him in the air like you just don't care, and give him hair while lumber rocks you down. Calm tight, but while in a minute, like what you don't know might hurt ya. I'm buster, radius of grenade clusters. My mind's filled like a minefield. Time to build, double yield, and feel the force of concentrated steel. We got time to roll that time. Rhyme shine like summer day, another haze for the pastime. Niggas be swearing they choice when they just moist, talking like they smooth as a Rolls Royce with me in it. Don't be timid and grab no micro. I thought all the shit MCs will put to rest and not go. Break it up, break it in, break it on out, bitch. Yeah, that's how I like it. And when the feeling's right, I never fight it. Check it out, my mic detonates, causing riots. Sounds ricochet through domes, claiming victims. Everything's straight 'cause I'm a fucking inmate.
Now if your spiritual's incapable, hawk, my aerial assault got niggas open like Capone's fork. Thriller, drama, terror, fastball error to your face, point blank, 200 mph from the Lone Star State, sent to make the earthquake, representing wherever, forever. Ginsu, your thing true, rubber click be thicker than a first grade pencil, killing each and every nigga for sport. The routine, hard heads in clean, know exactly what I mean. It'll see, need I stress this? Texas flexes, born at the harder, I bust your young and leave you restless. I hold mics like a hype holds a pipe. Renegade a rap, man, I slayed ASAP. Tried to tackle me, I stiff-armed this fucking faculty. The wind, whoosh, it's hectic here. Me and my mics like electric chairs. We go way back like drive-bys and hood highs. Unhappy skill vet who ain't killed yet. Hear me now, I'm too advanced for youngsters. The Avalanche branch, massive Rottweiler owner and heavenly body boner. Fuck fancy clothes, hoes who up they nose. When the name blows up, baby, you paying for my pose. Worked up Freddie Rodriguez, walking clouds in Adidas, counting dead presidents. Nigga, call us if you need us. Please, no media, just throw this photo on the back page. Niggas be acting shady while they ladies lounging backstage. Towns ricochet through domes claiming victims. Everything's straight 'cause I'm a fucking inmate.